Welcome to the Standing Committee meeting for Infrastructure, Wednesday the 3rd of August, and welcome to councillors, staff, public joining us in the gallery, welcome, and also to anyone watching live stream. I'd like to open the meeting with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. Thank you, everybody. Do we have any requests for leave of absence? Do we have we have some councillors who are dialing in via Teams this morning. Welcome, Councillor Henshin. Do we have Councillor Potter online? No. Councillor Jones? No. Okay. So I'll move a leave of absence for Councillors Jones and Potter at this stage. And seek a seconder. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Shoemaker, thank you. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay. Recognition of our traditional owners. Thank you, Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to acknowledge country and the land where we meet this morning, the Waka Waka land, excuse me, and acknowledge the elders, both past, present and emerging. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillors, in relation to today's agenda, do you have any items of conflict of interest that you'd like to disclose to the meeting? If not, feel free to do so throughout the course of the meeting should something come past you. Councillor Henshin's good. Thank you, Councillor Henshin. Okay, we'll now then move on to 5.1 minutes of the Infrastructure Standing Committee meeting held on the 6th of July. They are at page 5 on the agenda, where it's recommended that the minutes of the Infrastructure Standing Committee meeting held on 6 July 2022 be received. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker, a seconder? Councillor Duff, thank you. Speakers? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay. Item 6.1 on the agenda can be found at 17. Okay. Right. So I'd like to move a motion as provided, as notice provided, that the committee recommend to Council that the following projects are scoped and costed with a view to Council applying the $1,644,465 of local roads and community infrastructure Phase 3 extension funding in the 23-24 year to these capital projects, and a report be brought to the November 2022 Infrastructure Standing Committee meeting, including capital and whole-of-life costings for consideration. Wondai Industrial Estate, Stage 2, Haley Street, Wondai Drainage and Road Sealing, Alfred Street, East Kingeroy, Stage 1 Rehabilitation, and Gore Street, Mergen State High School, Curb and Channeling / Parking. I'll hereby move such. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Duff, thank you. I'll now speak to the motion. So these projects I've presented as a motion to the committee for consideration on the basis that they have been put forward, I think, by members of the communities where these assets are held. The Wondai Industrial Estate Stage 2 has been something that we've been discussing for some time. There's been obviously a few meetings with residents down there. And I do believe that we have a process in place to start at least progressing that. I'd like to see that Council commit to providing a source of funding for that in the 23-24 year, and it's my view that the LRCI funding, while we're yet to see the guidelines for the extension phase, I would expect that they would not be terribly different to what we see in the past for LRCI programs, and I would expect that Council could be confident that the industrial estate roadworks would fit under that criteria. Similarly with Haley Street, it's my understanding, and I stand to be corrected, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that Mackenzie Street, Wondai, is the only main street, CBD street in the South Burnett that's unsealed. So if one was to drive to south to north on Mackenzie Street, around the back of the silos, it brings you down into Haley Street, and there's an area there. It's a horseshoe-shaped road that is an unsealed road. It doesn't have curb and channeling. I have been approached by the Wondai community to have that road sealed with drainage installed, thereby enabling traffic to flow between Haley and Mackenzie Street without coming across Scott Street. One of the intentions for doing so was that to be able to close Scott Street so that, particularly for the running festival, the running festival at the moment starts in McKell Park, and the aspiration of the committee is to move it up to Coronation Park. One of the reasons for that is that the festival has grown to the extent that they need more space, but also because the businesses that are at the northern end of Wondai don't get a great deal of benefit at the moment from the running festival because it's very much isolated down at that McKell Park end. So that's the feedback that we've got from the Wondai Business Network, and hence I've put that forward. If that road was sealed with curb and channeling, I believe it would then give us the scope to be able to close Scott Street for some of those major events, allow them to extend from Coronation through McKell without compromising the flow of traffic into the CBD, with that alternate route being provided. The next one, Alfred Street, East Kingeroy, it's something that I've been advocating for to council for some time, presenting to council for some time. In behind the peanut silos, Kingeroy, we did receive a report to say it would be $1.8 million to do the whole area. I'm suggesting that perhaps that could be done, for example, over 3 stages, and that a stage 1 rehabilitation would deal with the worst sections of that. It's the significant damage there to the road pavement, and there is large amounts of water that flow underneath that area, which give us continual issues there. It's a very heavily trafficked road in Kingeroy. It supports a lot of trucks that come through there going up into the peanut silos. And again, I would expect that it would meet the guidelines in terms of LRCI moving forward. Gore Street, Mergen is something that I know Councillor Duff has been working with the community and has been put forward previously. And the curb and channeling there is something that I know the high school, with their new admin building, their new youth hub and their new performing arts centre, are very keen to see council provide some more appropriate drainage and parking at that facility. So that's a brief overview of the projects. The intention of the motion is to be able to give direction to staff to go away and start the process of scoping and costing such, with a view to that being brought back in November for consideration by council, basically to get the ball rolling so that when we get to the point where the funding body is seeking our submission, that we've got the work done and we're in a position to be able to submit that well in advance. So I'll leave it at that. I'll now call for further speakers. Thank you, Councillor Erkins. Thank
you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, while I totally support these projects, thank you. What I'd like to know, this wouldn't stop anybody else from putting in for any projects to be looked at as well, because I know only still getting my head around what we need in my area. There are a few things that I would like to have council look at, so just wanting to know the procedure for me to have them put in, not big projects, just small projects. So I know the walking track in Nanango is in very bad condition at the moment. It needs some attention. So I don't know if that's actually a project or whether that's just some maintenance, but how I would go with putting some projects in from my area. But I fully support these projects. I've been and had a look at them all, so I do support them. But as I said, just some clarification on how I would go.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. If I could answer that. The intention here is certainly not to preclude other projects from coming forward. It was really, we've received notification in relation to this funding, so it was really just to kickstart a process whereby we can start putting forward projects that are being put to us from the community. The intention is to have those projects then at least undertake some initial preliminary scoping, preliminary estimate costing, so that that can then come back for consideration by council. So this may form part of a longer list that could that would then, I imagine, go through a prioritisation process by council. It's not guaranteed that these projects would be in, or guaranteed that other projects would be out. So short answer, yes. Certainly opportunities would still be there to do that. Thank you. Councillor Schumacher.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I did just have a couple of questions. I don't disagree. I think they're great projects, and you're right, they have all been discussed in this chamber, or we've been and had a look, or we've talked to different groups about them. The Wondai Industrial Estate Stage 2, as I understand it, we've already committed to designing the project, and we're of the view that it could cost somewhere around $700,000. I would just like to confirm with the team, the infrastructure team, that we have actually committed, I think it was around $30,000 to design the Wondai Industrial Estate.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. My understanding is that we have a resolution on the books. I thought it was 45,000, General Manager, to commence the design.
Through you, Mayor, I believe it was 35, I think.
35,000, was it?
So
Thank you.
that work is happening, that scoping is happening. The Hayley Street Wondai Drainage and Road Sealing project, certainly been through Wondai, don't disagree. I think there's a number of questions I have around that, around road user data and alike. So I'm interested to learn more about that project, but I am concerned around if we actually choose to scope and cost these projects, does that need a budget allocation, and does that push back projects already on our advanced design program, because we don't have more staff to deliver those designs? So we'd be asking existing staff to go and put these projects ahead of projects we've already identified in the pipeline. So my question probably to General Manager Tim is, just with these projects here, would you need a budget allocation to actually go forward with the scoping, or can you do a preliminary design? Do you have the resources to deliver on this?
Thank you, Acting General Manager.
Through you, Mayor. Yes, I just spoke to James. He believes he's got the capability at the moment to do it internally. We're not sure on, depending on what the scope ends up being, particularly like that, the Gore Street one. As Mayor knows, we went down there. It could be quite detailed. Then we'd have to come back. The only concern I may have through you, Mayor, is maybe the November timeframe might be a bit short for us. That's all.
Thank you, General Manager. Certainly flexible there as to what works for the team. Happy to push that back if we need more time. Thank you.
Yeah, we're certainly aim for November, but yeah, just aware that something could come up. That's all.
Thank you, General Manager. We'll stay with you, Councillor. Thank you.
Yeah, Alfred Street East Kingeroy, it's absolutely a high traffic road, and absolutely there are challenges there in replacing it. As we know, there's a lot of spoilt clay underneath the ground, and the underground water table is a challenge. So I think to do that in a staged approach really is the only way that we could possibly fix that problem. And the Gore Street channeling, I'm absolutely supportive of that, but I wanted to confirm, it's my understanding we've already put that forward as a Safer School ST project, or somewhere in our pipeline for future government funding applications. I thought we had identified this project.
I don't believe so, Councillor, but we'll
Can
just
I
confirm with
confirm
we'll confer with our General Manager if we could. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mayor. No, not at this stage. We haven't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Look, I'm supportive of this. However, my concern is, once again, we're picking a series of projects, and when I read through the report here around LRCI, it was my understanding there are a number of other projects that have been identified, as Councillor Erkins has said, and that this may actually be an opportunity with our heavy amount of our significant infrastructure projects underway, the flood work spending underway, the betterment funding. I'm mindful how pushed our infrastructure team already is, and how this could potentially be an opportunity for more community-based projects, as we had to, unfortunately, we could not fund them all in the last Works for Queensland round. So I'm of a mind where, like, I'm happy to get some indicative costings of this, but to be honest, I would like to see us go through and use the prioritisation tool to really take a good, close, hard look at these projects and determine which ones we proceed with. I'm really mindful, I'm just doing my sums here, but the $1.6 million worth of LRCI funding isn't going to go far if we've got the Wondai Industrial Estate at 700, the Haley Street Wondai drainage and road sealing. I know a kilometre of road sealing is around $1 million at the moment. You know, so I don't know what that looks like. Alfred Street East, we've put up 1.8. You know, if you do that in 3 stages, you'd be looking at 600, 700,000. And the Gore Street curb and channeling program, my understanding is looking at that project. That's a large project as well. So my concern is we would do all this work and then once again pick and choose rather than put this through the prioritisation and really back the projects that we know, you know, really back projects that deliver an outcome to our community and help us in our budgetary constraints. So my concern here is I'm with Councillor Erkins. There's a number of projects that we've all got in mind for this funding. My concern is we're going to send staff away to do a heap of work and then still probably argue about it. There's always going to be winners and losers, and I'm not sure this is the right approach. I would have preferred to have actually had a conversation about all the projects that everybody had in mind and put them all through the prioritisation tool before we start picking and choosing. So I'm not sure whether I'm actually going to support this motion. I actually have an amendment in mind, but I'm happy to listen to the conversation. Mr. Mayor, I'm not against doing it, but I am against, I've learned a lot through the Burt Road situation where we've had conversations, we scoped something up, we talked to our community, and we divided our community because of that. I don't want to see it again over these projects. We did the same thing with the Works for Queensland funding, where we got everybody on board, talked about it. We had too many projects, not enough funding. We divided our community again. So I don't want to see that for the South Burnett. I want to see us make rational decisions based on evidence, based on data, based on what we know, and try to stretch this grant funding as far as we can to deliver on the priorities of the region. So that's my view at this point in time. And to be honest, I would rather see us go through a proper process than cherry pick our projects and put them up.
Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't believe that these projects are cherry picked. I think that these projects are vital for our community, particularly the Wondai Industrial Estate. It's not something that's been from left field. It's something that has absolutely been prosecuted. It's really, really important to the industry. It should have been done yesterday. To have, like, I'm disappointed that it's going to get in the 23-24. I would have liked to have seen it in this year's budget. So, and the problem with all of that process is that we never ever get around to doing it, and then all of a sudden we've got, this is an opportunity to actually give the staff some direction, and these fit perfectly into the local roads and community infrastructure. It's always been the way that we've done things is that local roads and community infrastructure goes towards those road sort of projects, and the Works for Queensland money is more for your parks and gardens. So I just think that these projects are a perfect fit for what we're trying to achieve. The Haley Street one, the Wondai drainage one, we've spent millions of dollars supporting the Bacon Fest, and I know that Wondai running festival, that would make such a difference to, that project would make such a difference to the way that they have that festival. They want to have it in the centre of the park, and at the moment they have to have it down one end and then move up to do their opening. That would turn that around, and as the Mayor said, again, it's that whole street, it's the only street that hasn't got a full seal in the main part of the town. So that's would be a fantastic project for Wondai. The Alfred Street East Kingeroy one, as you said, we've talked about that one. That's a perfect opportunity to get that stage one done. And the Gore Street one, again, the principal has said that he thinks it's a safety issue. The councillors have all been there. We've seen that project. It would be We've got the admin building, the whole, all of that new area has changed where they park in front of the school, and that's a lot of congestion. It's causing all sorts of issues. It should have been done again yesterday. So these projects need to be done sooner rather than later, and it's a good opportunity to get, as I said, some direction for once, instead of saying, oh, all of a sudden we use a priority tool. We never used it for the Works for Queensland stuff. We only use a priority tool when it suits and when you want to vote against a motion. So I'm really keen to see these supported. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you, and good morning everyone in the chambers and looking and listening. Yeah, look, fully supportive, and as the motion states, it's projects to be scoped and costed with a view for council. So yeah, fully supportive. But if we go back only a couple of weeks, we had 13 other articles on our agenda, with just to name a few: Kingeroy drainage and channeling there. We had Geelong, we had Cumbria, and as Councillor Erkin said, there's things in Menango that there's she'd like seen done. So we all have, but there was a list of 13 that was spoke on fairly at length.
Okay, we've probably lost internet
Debate
connection.
there only a couple of weeks ago, and
Okay, we'll just...
the Wandai Industrial Estate, of course. Yeah, very supportive of that, have always been. Harley Street and Wandai had a
Councillor Henson, we're just having trouble hearing
conversation
you.
only this morning with the gentleman in. Sorry, Mr. Mayor, are you right?
No,
Yeah,
you're just cutting in and out. You're obviously...
Harley Street drainage this morning in conversation with that. Sorry, can you hear me?
yeah, we've got you now. Thank you.
Hello?
No, you're cutting in and out, Councillor Henson. But I think we've got most of what you've said.
Yeah, hello. Can you hear me there in the chambers?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Not sure my end seems to be open. Do apologise. Not sure whether you can hear me. I keep talking, you might hear me. Maybe.
Yeah, keep talking.
So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. If I'm cutting in and out, that would be very painful for everybody. So if you've heard most or part of what I've got to say, I don't have any objections to anything, but I'm happy to move forward.
Thank you, Councillor Henson. Okay, you've had your one opportunity, Councillor Erkin, so we'll leave it at that. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to provide closing comments here before we go to the vote. Yeah, look, absolutely, these are clearly critical projects, and certainly they're not going to be the only projects that council have come forward from the community or from our staff for that matter. I identified these projects because they do, in my view, fit very clearly within the guidelines as significant roads and community infrastructure projects. They have clearly been articulated by the community as something that's important to them for their communities. And the intention here is to be able to provide some preliminary scoping and costing so that council can do exactly that, that we can go through a process of prioritisation against other potential projects. Now, the prioritisation tool, if council resolves to use that as a method of assessing or making decision in relation to those LRCI projects, then that does need costings. It needs whole of life costing, it needs some costing. So it would be challenging to go through a process of making decisions without this being done. I guess what I'm trying to do here is get something started, because what I don't want to see is that we get a date from the department and they say, look, you've now got to tell us what you're going to sign up for on these projects, and then we've got to go back to our planning and design team and ask them to rush through a process of scoping and designing something. What I want to do here is to give them early notice, give them time, And if this needs to go back to January or February, look, I'm fine with that, Tim. It's about giving them time to be able to start something, give them some direction so they can get working on these projects. Look, and look, I know there are 13 other projects that have been mentioned. I know, Councillor Erkins, we did have the opportunity, though, to pass those 13 projects, and we chose to do the water reservoir at Rural instead. Now, that has left those 13 projects hanging, and I don't believe that that's an argument that should override these key projects still being progressed. So, look, with that, I'd certainly commit it to the committee as something that would, I think, be good governance. It's in response to the community, and I would certainly seek the support of the committee in relation to this. So, having said that, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Councillor Erkins, Councillor Duff, Councillor Otto. We've got you there, Councillor Henshin. Those against? Councillor Shoemaker. Councillor Henshin, can we just get you to indicate, are you in favour or against? Yep, voting for? I think that's a voting for. Is it, Madam CEO? The thumbs up? Okay, so passed 4 votes to 1. Thank you all. We'll move on to 7.1, which is the Roads and Drainage Portfolio Report, which is at 18. Oh, sorry. To receive. My apologies. Okay, I'm getting carried away with getting through the agenda. Thank you, Madam CEO. Thank you very much. We've had some residents bring forward a petition, and so I'd hereby move that the committee recommend to council that the petition regarding ongoing flooding at Avoca Place be received and referred to the Chief Executive Officer to determine the appropriate action, and a report be brought back to council. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Erkins. Speakers? We'll go, Councillor Erkins. Just your light there.
This is definitely an issue. It's an ongoing issue, and it's not only the people in Avoca Place that are actually affected by this, it's the properties that are behind them that are also affected. So, I really support this because it's something that needs to be looked into. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Further speakers? We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? We've got Councillor Henshin. Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Thank you for reminding me, Bree. Okay, 7.1, Roads and Drainage Portfolio Report. That is at 18. And we'll take it as presented. I'll move that Councillor Jones' Road and Drainage Portfolio Report to council be received for information. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Erkins, thank you. Speakers, any observations, questions? Councillor Duff, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just it's a question that I'd like clarified. So submission 1 and submission 2 seem to have most of the roads are around Kingeroy and, well, particularly around Kingeroy and Cumbia, and it's just my belief that the 4 or 5 flooding events that we've had have predominantly been in my division, and yet on the table 1 and table 2 of the submissions we put forward, there's not one road that is in that area that I believe is where the major flooding was, around that Baramba catchment. And so none of the submissions have been put forward. I've got people in that area that are very, very upset about the roads and the timelines, and yet the submissions that we put forward do not include any of those roads. And I just wanted clarification from the Acting General Manager of Infrastructure as to why none of those roads in the Baramba catchment have been included in either submission 1 or submission 2 of the flooding.
Through you. Thank you, Acting General Manager.
Through you, Mayor. I might just refer to Manager Kev for that, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So our flood damage is certainly a work in progress, and there are submissions that we're currently working on, submissions that are currently being assessed through the QRA, and obviously submissions that have been approved and are currently, we have crews working on them. You see submission 1 and 2, particularly submission 1 was quite a number of varied roads in various areas, Manar Road, Red Hill Road, Old Proston, etc. Certainly the submission 2 was in that north to west area of Kingeroy. You have our later submissions, which will encompass other areas in the region. Ultimately, the flooding, now 5 events, is extensive and it's across the whole region. So we won't be missing out on any of the regions ultimately. But if it does seem slanted, it's certainly not by intention. We currently have 9 teams today. Certainly over the last week and a half, inspecting the entire network. So that's essentially 18 of our staff doing road inspections, and that's across the entire network to ensure we do capture all of the defects, both the emergency and the restoration defects, to ensure that we don't miss anything out.
Thank you, Manager. We'll stay with you, Councillor.
Through you, Mr Mayor. So my concern is that we've put pretty much every single road across our whole region into this flood assessment, whereas it's my belief that most of the flooding was directed in certain areas, and that has, it's just my thoughts, I could be totally wrong, that it's just going to slow the whole process down because we're assessing pretty much every road in our region. Whereas if we had just said, well, okay, this is the flood area, leave all those other roads out and then we could have been grading those rather than waiting for them to be assessed. I'm just concerned about the whole process and the timelines and how long it's going to take before some of these vital roads are actually going to be attended to, because I am getting angry ratepayers in my community that have had their roads have been smashed 4 and 5 times, and they're waiting for something to happen. So I'm just wanting to understand why we've put pretty much every road in our whole region when it's my belief that there was only sort of targeted areas that were flooded. Thank you.
We'll stay with you, General Manager. Thank you.
Yeah, certainly happy to take that information on board. Again, we've over the last week and a half, we've inspected close to 1,000 roads. We still have about another 450 roads to do, and it's certainly across the region we're finding, and not certainly there are more damage and probably a little bit more intense in those areas, but we certainly don't want to miss out on other areas that may have received some degree of flooding. But yeah, certainly happy to take that information on board.
Thanks very much, Manager. Further speakers? Councillor Schumacher.
Yes, thank you. Certainly appreciate the work that's happening behind the scenes, and recognise that, yeah, there has been flooding across the entire region. Some of it has been flash flooding, some of it has been due to rivers and creeks, and it's I never ever thought I'd say it can stop raining now, but it really can stop raining now. I cannot believe we've had a 5th activation, and I was pleased to see here that we are actually talking with QRA around trying to reduce those 4 trigger point payments of $212,000. I wondered if there was anything happening, like if there was a timeline for that in terms of when we have to pay that amount of money, or when we may know if they'll actually consider a reduction, is my question through the Mayor to the team.
We'll go to you first, Manager, and then perhaps General Manager I may like to contribute. Yeah, thank you, Manager.
Through you, Mr Mayor, we do have a representative from Queensland Reconstruction Authority coming out today and tomorrow, and that's certainly one of the questions on the agenda is to look at the trigger points, and so as it stands, we're up to 5 trigger points. So that's about $1 million that council currently is needs to pay. But certainly there's and if we do find any information out over the next few days from our discussions with QRA, then we'll certainly update council.
Stay with you, councillor. Thank you.
Thank you for the clarity. My other question, just good to read on page 25 that a local contractor was awarded the work put out there in the submission. I just wondered in terms of how, what criteria is actually used to award those works. And I did read here that we received 4 offers, and I just wanted to know, like, how are we going in terms of actually getting contractors to deliver on the enormous amount of work that we've got? Are the offers reasonable? And what criteria are we actually weighting toward actually who we select to do those works? That's on page 26. It says a second submission containing 35 roads recently submitted. An invitation to offer was released to market. Council to deliver the works on 4 roads. 4 contractors responded to the invitation to offer, with the contract being awarded to Yesberg Earth Moving post-offer evaluation. I just didn't quite understand how we were actually selecting contractors and how we're going in terms of actually getting contractors on board.
Thank you, Manager.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly happy to provide a little bit more detail perhaps in our next Infrastructure Standing Committee, but typically it is weighted through cost, time and experience, and then by default there is a local contractor, a local business advantage. In terms of the number of contractors that have been submitting prices, we do. I think we're struggling to get the interest there, and particularly from a local perspective, we've been fortunate enough that we have one local contractor at the moment. With the roadworks, we have a local contractor doing our drain cleaning. We also have 2 contractors from outside the region assisting in the work as well. So it is a bit of a mix. I think as we commence ramping up this work, there may be more reliance on contractors from outside this region, on the basis that we probably don't get the amount of interest from local contractors at this stage.
Yes, because I read that we've actually once again delayed our capital works program and our our grading program to redirect resources back to the flood response. So I guess my thinking is, you know, with a lot of these works underway, it's obviously beyond council's capacity to deliver all of the work. And if we're struggling to get contractors, that is a bit of a concern in terms of how we deliver on these parcels of work and provide a safe road network for our residents in spite of all these challenges. My other question, just in relation to 2 capital works projects, great to see they're all some are progressing. The Glendon Street, Markwell Street roundabout, I see we've almost fully expended our budget there. I just wondered, it says that we're waiting line marking. I just wondered around the landscaping and if the concrete was actually going to be spray paved, like if that's in what the time frame is for that. And the other project I was just checking in on is the Blackbutt CBD. Looking there, I know there's a lot of work happening in the park at the moment. The actuals at July were 946,000. So I just wondered if all funds will be expended on that project. They're my 2 remaining questions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Manager.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So Glendon Street, Markwell Street roundabout, that's correct. It's the finishing touches to that one. So the line marking and the coloured surfacing and any of the remaining landscaping works. In terms of the CBD black, but yeah, that's the cost to date, 946,000 versus the budget 1.6 million. That will be a tight budget and it will be fully expended. I would that's certainly the expectation.
Thank you, Manager. Further speakers? Councillor Henson? No, Councillor Henson's fine. Just a couple of questions, if I could, Manager. The George Street car park, and we've got Manager Darcy here, 95% complete in design. We've allocated $825,000 to that project through the LRCI Round 3 funding 22-23. Just, we're certainly well aware that a lot of the construction materials and services costs are going up. Is there any indication at this stage that we may need to reconsider the budget for that in light of those rising costs? Thank you, Manager Darcy.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, Council and Mayor. Yeah, at this point in time, we are, and you would have noted this in the report, we are nearly finalising the completion of that. We are working closely with the KTP team as well around recognising what the values are of infrastructure for the procurement of materials. We do have a little bit of a contingency in there, but that is being absorbed as well at the same time, because we are wanting to get onto that project sooner rather than later to minimise the chance of any shock associated with material procurement. So at this point in time, no. And we will engage further with the KTP team on whether there are any pending issues as we get closer to the commencement of that project being constructed.
Yeah, thank you very much, Manager Darcy. Looking forward to that coming forward once you've got all that information at hand. Two other questions while we've got you, Manager. Cumbria Streetscape, I know it's later in the report, but it's here, 95% designed. Cumbia's having their Hall Centenary on the 3rd and 4th of September. Just want to confirm that we will be able to progress with the works after that's completed. I don't think they want us to start the work before then. But confirming that, yes, we will be in a position to be able to commence the work, and where we're positioned at the moment in a lot of what we know right now in terms of being able to then complete that by Christmas. Any concerns? Probably keen to hear at this point in time. Thank you, Manager.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Where we're looking to do, like, we've still got some very minor details that we need to close out, but we are looking at bringing that back to council for resolution of the design very, very soon in order to assist with the delivery of that. As highlighted earlier, contractors are quite difficult to acquire right now, so there are some known issues with procurement in the industry, and that is noted, but it is something that we will certainly aim for, given that there is a pending timeline with that centenary being only a month away. There is, I cannot see us getting too far advanced in commencing any on-site works in advance of that centenary date. But as to what we can achieve off the back of that, we need to get the resolution through council first in order to give us confidence on what we can deliver in advance of Christmas.
Thank you, General. Thank you, Manager. Manager, my final question was in relation to Leopard Court, Kingeroy, and the drainage works there. Again, 95% designed. Any indication as to approximate time frame in terms of communicating that back to residents? I know it's in the 22-23 capital budget. In your mind at this stage, approximately when would you think we might be looking at the works for that project, managers? Thank you, Manager. So,
happy to take that one on notice, Mr. Mayor. I think and report back with a time. At this stage, we haven't identified a particular time, but perhaps work on that and get back at the next ISC meeting.
Yeah, that'd be much appreciated. Thanks very much, Manager Searle. Any further questions, councillors, observations? If not, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? We've got Councillor Henson. Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 7.2, Kingeroy Transformation Project Update at 31. And we might get the report first, and then we can look to get that motion on the floor. So I don't think we've got Project Manager Megan here, but
I'm there, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, we have. Oh, sorry, Aaron. Good morning.
No.
I didn't
morning,
see
Mr.
you
Mayor.
there on
Good
the
morning,
screen.
Yeah, no.
G'day, Aaron. How
I've
you
been
going?
hiding over good.
th-
I've been hiding over in the back. So
Thanks for joining us. We'll hand over to you to deliver your report. Thanks very much.
no worries. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, councillors. I'll give a brief update. You've got the report there in front of you. Obviously, we've been very, very busy in Glennon Street. Our concrete and civil teams have done a tremendous job there in the last, particularly the last month, to get the shared zone installed. At this stage, we will be asphalting in the shared zone next Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We'll be having some minor works in there on Sunday as well. So the crews will be working through the weekend to obviously minimise the impact on businesses. So it's a public holiday on Monday in the South Burnett, but not for our asphalt contractor in Toowoomba. It's not. So we'll be making that effort through the weekend to do that work. I think most people would have seen the shared zone, particularly if they've been walking past going to and from the council building. It's starting to really take shape, to be honest, which is a tremendous amount of effort, particularly for a large complex construction there. But those over near the EV charging stations, and I'll talk about those in a sec, there's probably over 100 conduits in those pits there that the team has installed. So our power systems for all of the electrical in the KTP comes back to that shared area where the transformer is at the moment. So there's a lot of gear, a lot of conduit going into that area, which is very, very difficult for them to construct. Just as we mentioned there too, and council would have saw my email the other day, Eureka Energy are actually on site today to install the EV charging stations as part of the Queensland Government's electric vehicle superhighway phase 3. And they'll be looking to liven them up as soon as possible. So it's been great to do that in conjunction with that team. Our structures are also due at the moment. That was awarded to BZE Engineering, a local firm, to do the structures for the shared zone based out of Mergham. They're currently being finalised at the moment. We hope to start having those stood up next week prior to Bacon Fest, at least have the posts in so that we can close up those areas, which will start to take shape. After Bacon Fest, we'll be actually going through and finalising the rest of the concrete surfacing in that area, and then starting to hook up our electrical and bring in our furniture and all those sort of items. Also, too, we've actually, contrary to my report, we've actually recommenced surfacing this week in Alfred Street. We have a local contractor, which is Mark Hutchinson from Kingeroy Decorative Concrete. I think a lot of people in the community know Mark. He's been doing it for about 25 years. We've actually recommenced there. We did have an issue with the water-based sealer that we've done on the southern side, which unfortunately we went to a product with Mark that was less chemical and less impact on the businesses due to its smell. Mark will be correcting that in the next couple of weeks. We've actually gone back to a solvent-based sealer, and we've recommenced works there at Hunter Gatherer this week and also up at the church. We'll aim to have a large part of Alfred Street completed prior to Bacon Fest, so it should start to take shape through there fairly soon. Also, I think most people would notice that we've had a lot of trees turn up and landscaping turning up on KTP at the moment. So a lot of the fencing is coming down. We're currently on the post office corner this morning. We're getting ready to pour some concrete around there, then we can start finalising those gardens. We'll also be taking down the fences around near the hairdresser on Harley Street, near the Glennon Street Cafe, and also the gardens up near Aussie Land and Livestock as well. They've commenced concrete works there today as well. So we'll be looking to close up as many gardens as we can over the next couple of weeks prior to Baconfest and have the streets starting to look really, really good. So I just want to, congratulate and thank our Parks and Gardens teams too. They've been tremendous to work with. We've had Matt and Adrian and their teams join with our KTP crews to support us in getting those trees in, and also to finalise those gardens through there, and the team have really started to take some ownership of that, which is I think is a great outcome as well. So Alfresco Works, so the one that we do get asked a lot about at the moment is when are we doing the alfrescos. At this stage we'll plan to start those probably late August, early September after Baconfest, and we'll start working our way progressively through the streets with our team to get those installed. Just there, also you've got the progress update, which is basically just highlights where we're up to on each of the stages. Also there, I've put a budget update there for council. Generally at the moment our current forecast has us somewhere between 0 and 50,000 within our budget. We'll continue to watch that month by month as we go through, but at this stage we're hopeful that we'll be very close to what we've nominated to council. But as the Mayor mentioned before, we are still seeing price rises across industry, which is unfortunate, but it'll be a challenging time for the next 12 months, I think, for a lot of construction projects. Just down there too, we've got some photos there for those. You can see a couple of before and after shots, particularly around the Glennon Street Cafe. And also our Forward Works program, as we see there, will have us coming into our major fit out for our electrical systems over the next month or so, and we'll commence that shortly. Also, Luke and the team they've been doing an update for businesses. So I think Luke and the divisional councils will be out in the street probably next week, just giving businesses an update of what the next 2 to 3 months looks like for them, so they can see that work is coming through, and also to give people an idea when we may be surfacing in their street as well, because that's obviously probably the larger impact in the next couple of months through for those accesses. So with that, I didn't have anything. One thing I just would like to mention, the council was pointed out to me yesterday. So this time last year, actually I think it was pretty well to the day, we actually started asphalt works in Alfred Street on the first section, which is the section near Hunter Gatherer up to the church there in front of the shopping centre. And if you look at that, that took us 6 to 7 months to build that section. When you think about what we've built in the last 12 months, I think it's a tremendous job by the team to get through Haley Street, Kingeroy Street, and then into the second half of Alfred Street, and also to pretty well build Glennon Street, in which was pretty trying conditions with weather. I think it's a tremendous effort, particularly by our team on the ground, with our team led by Shane Lee and Phil Dugdale. So I just wanted to probably just acknowledge that, Mr. Mayor, if I may. It's 12 months since we did our first asphalt, and this weekend will be the last of our asphalt for the KTP.
Thank you very much,
That's
Project
me, Mr.
Manager.
Mayor.
Yeah, thank you very much, Aaron, and can certainly say on behalf of our council a sincere acknowledgement and congratulations on the way in which you've led and managed the team there, and the work that you've all done together in keeping this project on time, on track, in light of what you've highlighted has been very trying conditions with the weather. Seen the guys out there working when the rain's drizzling down just to try and keep things moving forward. So, yeah, you've done very well, and we're very grateful. Thank you very much. Okay, we've now got the
Mayor, I'll pass that on.
Yeah, thank you very much, Project Manager. Recommendation is that council note the attached KTP project update report for information. Do we have a mover? Mover? Yep. Councillor Shoemaker, thank you. Seconded, Councillor Henshin. Okay, speakers? Councillor Duff, thank you.
Just a question to General Manager Meehan. Just on the, I've had complaints about the garden beds, those grey garden boxes. The people, when they go to park in the bay, they can't actually open their door on one side. If they park close to the box, they can't get out, or vice versa. So just wanted to know, is there a solution for that?
Thank you, Project Manager.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Your question's duly noted, Councillor. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about that. It's just an unfortunate element of or result of that design as part of having landscape on the footpath. Similar to what happens in the shopping centre, I suppose. You've got concrete pillars at some areas for different reasons, and unfortunately it does block some of the passenger-sized doors. Some vehicles do park away from there. Majority of those parks are occupied. We have been watching that for a while, but they are actually a legal width park. But what happens is you do rely on additional space, normally at the next park, to open your door further if you need to, if you require that additional room. Which unfortunately we're unable to achieve on those where those planter boxes are. So unfortunately we don't have a solution there to increase that width any further at this time.
Thank you, Project Manager. Any further, Councillor Duff? Stay
No,
with you.
thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Schumacher.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, General Manager Aaron, for the update. I have been a bit around the street a bit this week, and I certainly think business is tough. I think cost of living, I think people are spending a lot less in the street. I think we're all looking at our household budgets and, you know, the items that we like versus the items that we need. The cost of groceries, these sorts of things mean that we're not spending as much locally on things that we like getting our nails done or our hair done or buying new shoes or new clothes. I know I've spoken to a number of different retailers in those areas, and I know they are really finding it hard right now. I know it's feeling the pinch, and because of that, I know the team are doing what they can, but I do feel we are starting to wear out our welcome in the street, and I certainly sense there is a real urgency and desire to see this project complete and to see the fences come down, to see the street clean, to see some pride in our street again. And I guess that's something that I have seen. I have seen quite a bit of litter around. I've seen, you know, and we really do need to do what we can. We're building something great, do what we can to maintain it. I do have a couple of questions for you, General Manager Meehan, that have come from businesses that I just would like to discuss. I think it's important that we all understand. The first question is, why didn't, as you said, we were in Alfred Street this time last year. The question is, why didn't we just fully complete a street before we moved on to the next one?
Thank you, Project Manager.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, it's basically a resourcing issue and also a question of weather. The main one for us is our civil resources have to move through and basically to meet our time frame for TMR to make that Harley Street. I think Council will note the TMR has given us, you know, in the order of $2.5 million. As part of that funding agreement, we have timelines to hit through there, and unfortunately, with those resources, we can't basically defer our resources back to do the minor. I call it the minor, but the finishing touches on a lot of those jobs. It actually makes the works quite inefficient because you'll start splitting crews. So as you can see coming through now, we are doing the civil elements at the moment, which basically the concrete and the telecommunication and the conduit crews have to go together. The one thing too, just point out too, that for the people may not be aware, with the conduit systems and the electrical systems and the water mains, all of those items have to be finished before they can be finalised. So unfortunately, you can't do half the electrical, say in Alfred Street, because you actually have no switchboard or no end-to-end to push that through. So as I mentioned there before, there's over 100 conduits coming into Glennon Street there, which is basically all of the electrical systems joining together to have that in as well. The other element to that is too, we're also waiting on switchboards for those. We've been waiting almost a year, if not over a year now, for those items to turn up. So we've basically taken the opportunity to push through our civil works because it's the most efficient use of our resources and cost. And also, we'd like to be further ahead too, which would have sped things up. But, you know, we've had significant rain on the project. I think when I reported to council, it might have been about 590 mil of rain that I copped on Haley Street. I shouldn't say I copped, council copped, which was, you know, a significant challenge for us, which slows down a lot of our concreting works, which makes it difficult to do that. The other thing I'll just add there too is efficiency and economy of scale and procurement. So if we look at the pricing, say, for our concrete surfacing. We have 10,000 square metres of concrete. It's very difficult for us to achieve an economy of scale if we're awarding small amounts, say, 2,000 square metres or 3,000 square metres of concrete surfacing. For efficient use and be able to access, say, a resource like Mark and his team, we have to have all the footpaths virtually finished so that we've got that forward pipeline in front of them so that they're actually getting a procurement for 10,000 square metres, which lowers our rates because that's the volume of our work, but also to, have that work program in front of them so that they've got those resources committed to that and they're not coming and going. It's very difficult, and I think most people will appreciate it too, that, to get trades to come to and come when we please is not how it's done anymore. A lot of time we're working around when we can get trades and specialist services also to be able to undertake that works. A bit like standing our street lights and those sort of things. When we're using main roads, we have to use a TMR approved contractor to do the traffic lights and street lighting, which means we've got to book them in months in advance, and they will come for blocks. Unfortunately, it's not a matter of us ringing them up and saying, can you come next Friday? So that we take all that into account with our programming as well. So that's pretty well where that comes from, Councillor. I think it's the most efficient use of our resources for what we're able to achieve.
Thank you. The second question I've had is why did we use decorative painting instead of coloured concrete?
Decorative painting and colour concrete. So the product that you use for colour concrete is a product called CCS. When we price that, because there's a border on it, that actually means we have to box up the border separately and pour that border in CCS colour. Then we have to box up the inside as well, which is highly expensive. So when we priced that was I don't know what the exact cost was, but it was significantly more expensive than using surfacing, because that means every square has to be poured twice, because you have to pour the red border, which means you have to formwork it in separate steel, and then we have to pour the centre as well in CCS, which is 2 pours for every square, as opposed to pouring 1 square in 1 set of steel and then basically coming through and surfacing. It's significantly more expensive to do that.
The other question...
Does that make sense, Councillor?
Yes, no, absolutely. The other question that I've had brought forward is, as you know, there are businesses in the street who are asking about compensation for the loss of trade. And my question is, do we have any means of compensating them for the impact or the disruption?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the work that we undertake is statutory work as a local government. So I probably have some stronger views in this one, but it's no. The short answer is no, we don't compensate. As a local authority, we have an obligation to replace our infrastructure within the CBD, whether that's roads, footpaths, or whatever that might be. And one of the things I'll add there is that the council is investing significant amount of ratepayers' money into the economic refurbishment and the social generation of the CBD, which is a long-standing benefit to the businesses and also to the community of the South Burnett over the next 20 to 50 years. Unfortunately, we do acknowledge that there is always impacts on the community and on businesses when you're doing these sort of works, but I think the last time that the Kingeroy Street was done in 1989, so there hasn't been significant works done in the CBD for quite some time, other than some asphalt resealing, I think. So I think it's a fairly sound investment that a refurbishment is going to happen at some point. But unfortunately, we don't compensate for loss of trade, and we never did on Mergen, and we don't do on Blackbutt as well. We're not required by law to do that. We are actually investing in the infrastructure on behalf of the community of the South Burnett. Does that make sense, Councillor?
Yes, thank you. And the final question that I have, it's one that I'm very keen to see us understand, is what our actual local spend has been, because I know there have been a number of local contractors working on the project. Have we done any calculations on that, or is there an opportunity to bring that back? Can that be a question on notice? I think it's really important. There has been significant investment by ratepayers, certainly by the federal and state government in this project, and I'm keen to see how we've actually invested that in our local economy.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to bring that back in a future report if that's okay. I can get Louise to run a creditor list, which is local,
Yeah.
and we'll also, I think, nominate that, whilst we've got a number of indirect expenditure in the area as well. So I think that's an important one to note. I don't think we'll be able to calculate the indirect spend, and by that I mean is accommodation and food and that sort of stuff that's spent through the area, along with supplies and those sort of things that is bought by contractors. So, but I'll talk to Louise. And see if I can get that done. And through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll bring that back in a future report if Councillor was happy with that.
Yeah, I think that's really important, thank you. And certainly that indirect spend, if there is any contractor feedback around roughly how many bed nights or things they've spent in town, I think it's good to understand. I know a lot of our local businesses are grateful for their trade, their lunchtime and their smoko breaks. Thank you very much for supporting those that we are impacting. And thank you for the opportunity to ask the questions.
Councillor Erkins.
Thank you. Just a comment on the last thing from Aaron about the improvements to the CBD. And I do understand that the building owners, they definitely will see an improvement because they own the buildings. But I'd just like to make mention, and for people not to forget, that small business in a small town is very difficult. And, there are a lot of small businesses that I believe, when they were sold the concept, really had no clear idea of the impact this was going to have on their businesses. And I just want people to acknowledge that a lot of these small businesses have definitely suffered, and it's obvious from a walk around the business section that a lot of them have actually suffered to the point where they've closed. So I just want to acknowledge that it's not all rosy for everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Erkins. Did you want to respond to that, Project Manager, or we'll move on otherwise?
Yeah, no, I'd note that, Mr. Mayor, and I agree with Councillor Erkins is that the building owners are generally they're not generally the businesses are not normally owner occupiers. A lot of times we see the business owners themselves, but they obviously have a landlord as well.
Yeah, thank you, Project Manager. Councillor Henson.
Just a point of order, Mr. Mayor. Just would like to confirm from the comments made, I certainly agree that businesses have suffered. However, a point of clarity around what businesses have actually closed in the CBD footprint. I know of many that have relocated, but I'm just sitting here trying to think of what businesses actually closed because of the KTP project. I don't actually think that's true and correct. I probably would like some clarification if there's a business that you're actually talking about.
Cake shop?
Okay, we might leave it there. I'll take that. Thank you, Councillor. General Manager, Project Manager, perhaps we could bring a report back as to the status of the small business sector in the main street. I did a count the other day. There are 20 empty shops in the KTP precinct, which certainly has increased from when we started. I think we had about 12 when we started, and it's up to 20 now. So I've been running numbers on this since day one. And certainly, please, this is no reflection on the work of the staff. Our design staff, our construction team, you're all doing a tremendous job. And I must say that it's very important that we acknowledge the work that you're doing. But I think it would be interesting to certainly get some data to clarify that point further, as Councillor Shoemaker's indicated, if we can. And perhaps it would be good, just on that point, you indicated, Project Manager, that next week or sometime in the future, your team will be doing a walk around those businesses with the two divisional councillors, Councillor Shoemaker and Councillor Potter. Would it be possible to perhaps invite the Mayor and the other councillors to join you in that, so that we can all get an understanding of how the business owners in the CBD are feeling? Is that something we could possibly arrange?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. So there's probably two parts to that for us. One is a program update. So probably what normally happens is we've had feedback before that some of the businesses don't like having 9 people in their shop, which is, so I'm probably just interested to see how did you want to handle that, Mr. Mayor, as far as doing an update, or do we just want to, I'm happy to invite all the councillors if we think that that'll be okay, or?
Thank you, Project Manager. I respect what you're saying there. Certainly, we don't want to disrupt the normal trading of any of our retailers. Whether we could just do a footpath walk and, be available out on the footpath if anyone wanted to come out and talk with us. Certainly wouldn't want to see us inundating the shops, but if we could do perhaps even just a footpath walk with an update for councillors, perhaps a viewing, be out on the street available to talk to anyone that wants to come out and have a chat with us. I think it would be really good to get everyone together, all 7 councillors as a group together to go around and make sure we're all on the same page, if that's possible. So, happy to keep it fairly informal, but without invading the shops of those residents, of those businesses. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that should be fine, Mr. Mayor. We'll try and get something together. I'll have a chat with Luke and just see what opportunities that we have there, and whether we just have a day where, if the councillors wanted to lap the businesses, and if the businesses wanted to have a chat, then they can voluntarily do that, and then move to the next shop or something like that, if that suited Mr. Mayor, depending on what they wanted to engage with.
Yeah, I think we'd probably leave it with with your team. You obviously understand the consultation process, and if you could perhaps guide us through that in a way that's going to obviously be palatable to those businesses, and so we do it in a way which isn't certainly going to be invasive on their trade. The other thing, Project Manager, if perhaps you could articulate, what is the vision for KTP in terms of the transition of the nature of the landscape. We certainly have seen, and it's certainly not indicating that it's been as a result of the KTP, but we can certainly see that there are many empty shops in the main street of Kingeroy. Is this part of, in your mind, the ultimate vision for the planning in terms of where we would see, what we would see the CBD looking like into the future in terms of the nature and composition of the types of businesses we're likely to see there? Because it seems that perhaps retail in CBDs across not just Kingeroy, but across many of the larger centres is starting to move into those new shopping precincts like Kingeroy Shopping World. And I know in some other towns we're seeing a change in the profile of the types of businesses we're seeing in the main streets now. Probably keen to hear what your thoughts and vision are around that, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I think, to be honest, the biggest opportunity for the future of the CBD would be council getting that dark fibre into the CBD. I think that's high-speed internet, high-speed connectivity, and then that opens up more opportunities for businesses. Like we're aware that there's a number of businesses who run a strong online presence. I think most people know the business I'm talking about around in Alfred Street. It's a major part to them in having that online capability. But I think the biggest thing is the opportunity for that infrastructure underneath the ground to do its thing, to be able to put fibre to the premises into a lot of these buildings would open up a lot of opportunities in my view, which would put us ahead of a number of other country towns in regional Queensland, which I think encourages investment. But I'm not an expert in that. I don't profess to be, but I think that is the biggest opportunity, is to be able to have that connectivity in a technology world. So I think that's an important one for council in the future to try and get that enabled. I don't know how we do that, but I think it's important that we improve connectivity everywhere. I think that'll be the main outcome of the future for any businesses.
Thank you, Project Manager, and certainly Council has applied for funding. This isn't something we've certainly we're not dragging the chain on this one. We've been in the process of applying for funding, and I'm sure we'll continue to do that in that space. I'll just give Councillor Erkins a quick opportunity to reply, and I think we'll need to wrap up this one and move on. Councillor Erkins, in terms of your statements previously, could you just clarify that for the committee? Thank you.
Okay, I'm not really sure what the clarification was. I know that the cake shop is gone, but I don't know what individual businesses, but I know people have moved from what they would consider a prime location in a main street of town to other areas out of the region, which will definitely affect your main street. As I said, but the business owners, I'm sure, they're the ones who definitely are going to be the ones that benefit. But again, just going back, small businesses, they are the ones that have really suffered. I'm not saying whether that is, I think that's a definite fact, but I really don't think a lot of them understood the real disruptions and how much it was going to affect them.
Thanks for clarifying, Councillor. And look, I did, General Manager, we can certainly get more information next week, but I had an owner of, I think, possibly 3, maybe 4 businesses in town who's a landholder come to me indicating that she has some of her major tenants looking to opt out of their, try and get out of their leases because of loss of trade, and not indicating that that's from KTP. It could be economic conditions, but there's a lot of pressure on the landlords of the shops in the CBD at the moment, with tenants coming back to them saying, "Look, our trade is down so much that we just don't know if we can continue to pay our leases." So that's something I'll certainly share with. We can hopefully hear more of next week when we do our tour around. And perhaps look at how we can perhaps address any of those concerns. But Project Mayor, the other thing was just in terms of those landlords, we're on that space. I know the KTP, the Kingeroy Chamber of Commerce and Industry, President Martu had indicated that they would be working actively with the landlords and the businesses to look at the facade development. I know we're sort of we're in the back end now of the completion of the project. So, as we move through to the colouring of the concrete and putting up the furniture, the outdoor furniture, finishing the project, is there anything to report in terms of what the Chamber of Commerce are doing with seeing those facades improvement? When I drive around, just the new footpath in the road, I think, makes the shops look better. Already it's given them a lift. Are we getting any feedback on what's happening in that space at the moment with the Chamber, with the business owners? Have you received any feedback that we can be aware of in terms of contribution from businesses to their shop fronts? Thank you.
Yeah. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll let General Manager O'May go to that one. I mean, I'm not involved with the facade program with the Chamber, but I just for Council's awareness, I am aware of 2 or 3 businesses who are currently going to be upgrading their frontage, which hopefully will inspire others. So I might just, Mr. Mayor, if that's okay, I'll hand to Peter.
Thank you, General Manager O'May.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so the facade improvement project was a project that was put up by council in partnership with the Chamber of Commerce for funding under the Black Summer bushfire funding. So that was funding that's been received. So we have had initial meetings with the Chamber. We're currently developing a MOU to facilitate that funding. So that's we're recruiting the officers that will come on board. It has just closed. We're just in the process of doing interviews to get those officers on board just to take that forward. So so we've had those initial meetings developing the MOU, so that program will roll out in the coming months essentially, and the Chamber have been chomping at the bit. They've been at us to get that paperwork in place to facilitate that program. So they should see movement very soon.
Excellent. Thank you, General Manager. Good to see that that's progressing. We're also developing the CBD of Blackbutt, of course, at the moment. Will that program extend to places like Blackbutt if we have shop owners there that want to be part of that?
Yeah, through you, Ms. Mayor. Yeah, so we'll extend across the region. The Chamber of Commerce were the proponents who brought this project forward for Kingeroy, but it is being extended right across the region. So that is part of the project.
Thank you very much. I'll just check in with Councillor Henshin. Anything to add from you, Councillor Henshin? No, you're all good. Okay. Councillor Schumacher, anything to wrap up as the mover? Closing comments before we go to the vote. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I absolutely think a pop-up on the street next week would be a great opportunity just to engage with our community and talk about, certainly answer some of the questions that I've asked here today. I think it's really wonderful to see so much hard work has gone into the project and that we are so close to the finish line. I guess my focus really is on delivering the vision that we did spend numbers and numbers of days in the shopping centre and around the street. Like when I think about where we've been over these last 2 years and how much engagement has been undertaken, it has been huge. I think we've tried really hard to sell the vision and the concept and share that with our community and seek their feedback around what they genuinely thought. And we have made changes along the way to suit that. I think, this is exciting when we see the structures go in. I'm so excited to see the new the bins go in the street. I think that's important. Seating, these sorts of things. And I certainly have been listening to feedback from different businesses around smoking in the street. I think there's some work that we need to do there in terms of creating designated smoking areas, perhaps. I certainly agree with some of your comments in relation to, the vision and how we see our CBD into the future. I think their conversations, I think the people in the street have got very valid feedback in that regard and ideas. And I would love to see us get more arts and culture funding. I'd love to see us have more buskers in the street, more street art, give people reasons to be in the CBD and to enjoy it and to walk around. And I do think council has a role to play in that beyond the hard infrastructure. I really do think we have to be thinking a bit differently, because I think the way we've thought in the past isn't going to serve us into the future. So I'm excited to see fences come down, the work continue. Very grateful for the team. I've told them all to speak nicely to those trees, to talk to those trees. They are a living green infrastructure. It needs good positive energy. So please do what you can, community, to encourage those trees to grow. And just acknowledge the team. I know they've had it hard. I know they've had a number of very challenging conversations with people in the street who haven't fully understood what we're trying to achieve, and really do appreciate the work that they're doing. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. I'd now like to move that we adjourn the meeting for morning tea. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Erkins, you've beat Councillor Henson to the punch. We've had a change for morning tea. No, Councillor Henson, he's had his hand up for the last 10 minutes. He's got both hands up. He wants morning tea. We've got dry biscuits here, Councillor Henson, so I hope you've got something nicer at home. But those in favour, carried unanimously. Thank you all. We'll adjourn. We'll resume shortly. Thank you. Meeting, do we have a seconder? Councillor Shoemaker, thank you. Those in favour? Carried. Carried. Thank you, Councillor Henson. Carried unanimously. Or well, if 5 votes, or however you do that, Bree. Welcome back, everybody. Before we get back into the order of business, I would like to read the following. The Australian Road Safety Foundation Award announcement. The South Bennett Regional Council have been successful in winning the Schools Program Award at the National Australian Road Safety Foundation Awards in Canberra on the 1st of August, earlier this week. Council's nomination was titled the School Safety Projects for the work that Council undertaken across the schools to improve operations for all users. Kingeroy State High School, the Nango State High School, St Mary's Catholic College Kingeroy, Tabinga State School and Wandai State School. The award is national recognition for the work undertaken in liaising with schools by Council to deliver quality outcomes to improve the awareness for all users of school-based infrastructure. Elements of work include modifications to school crossings, bus set-down bays, car parking, pedestrian crossings, people with disability bays, footpaths and pram ramps, line marking and tree removal, visual obstructions. Council would like to also acknowledge the school's contribution towards these outcomes, contributing insight into the quality of works achieved through this collaboration. Acting General Manager, to you, Manager Darcy, and all of your team, a very sincere congratulations. What a wonderful achievement on behalf of our council. And please, Madam CEO, would we be able to draft a letter from the Office of the Mayor to the team, to your team, congratulating you on what's a significant award. That's a national award. So well done, everybody. A really, really great achievement. And thank you for doing such wonderful work, and it's pleasing to see you've been recognised for that. We'll now move on then to item 7.3, minutes of the Traffic Advisory Committee meeting. That's at page 39. Before we pass that through, General Manager, any of your team like to provide an update? Manager Searle or Manager Darcy on the TAC meeting? Thank you. Manager Darcy, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the minutes of the TAC, the TAC are a quarterly meeting that we hold. And this particular update to council is around the minutes of the June meeting that we held just under 2 months ago, and looking to bring these items back for further review and any associated discussions. So we do anticipate on having a further meeting in early September to continue the dialogue between many parties, whether it's us, Main Roads or QPS, along with Councillors Erkins, Henson and Jones as well, to support Council's commitment to some of the safe outcomes that we get through those types of awards that they recognise at the same time. So happy to take any further questions, Mayor and Councillors.
Yeah, thanks very much. We'll go to Councillor Henson shortly, but first of all, we'll just get this one up. It's recommended that Council receive and note the attached minutes and recommendations of the Traffic Advisory Committee meeting held Tuesday, 14 June 2022. We have a mover. Councillor Henson's got his hand up. Yes, seconder. Councillor Shoemaker, thank you. We'll go to Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I hope they're more any clearer at the moment coming through.
Yes, that's much better.
That's better now, is it?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, just a question to Manager Darcy, and certainly one on notice, just so I was an apology at the last meeting. In relation to Main Roads, and I think it was perhaps discussed previously in a meeting prior, just had a phone call this morning in relation to the speed zone through Waroolan. They're having their time capsule on the 12th of November. Has there been any progress on that or further conversations, or where is that at? And I'm happy to have that on notice through you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Manager Darcy.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Henson, and through you, Mr. Mayor. It was a historic item around the review of the speed zone through Waroolan, where there was a request to reduce that back down to 50 or even 40 kilometres an hour. I'm happy to bring back the minutes of that from a previous meeting, but my correct recollection of the minutes was that TMR did consider it, but they elected to hold it at 60 just because of the village nature of Waroolan and the highway location as well. The length of the zone, because Waroolan is quite small, the length of that probably doesn't really contribute to wanting to drop that further to 50. So there was some consideration, but my general recollection of the minutes was that that was the reasoning for it. But can bring it back, taking it on notice, as you mentioned, Councillor, and bring that back for you to note.
Thank you, Manager Darcy. We'll stay with you, Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and hope I'm still transmitting clearly. It wasn't so much, Manager Darcy, in relation to a regular change of the speed zone. It was only a request in relation to that weekend on the 12th of November to reduce or be able to reduce that speed zone down through there while they're having that weekend.
Thank you, Manager.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Henson. I think we have the ability to probably work through that independent of the TAC, and we can actually work with Main Roads on an event such as that time capsule opening. Given that we've got really good prior notice and been able to work with the department a couple of months in advance, I think there's an opportunity to look at that fairly closely, and Main Roads will be able to provide some quality advice in that regard. So I think we can deal with that independently, and the beauty of that is that we will actually probably get a quicker response too. So happy to work with you on that, Councillor, in due course.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Manager Darcy. Yeah, that would be a great result. Just the gentlemen and the people involved in that down in Waroolan. Be an exciting weekend with that time capsule, as any time capsules would be. I think there's a lot of anticipation of what might come out of that, but it would be, and that would be good to hear, because they're only talking a time frame from perhaps through the morning to the mid-afternoon or something. So that would be a great result. Thank you very much.
Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just the one thing I wanted to ask about, just around the St Mary's Catholic School Zone discussion on parking signs and stop, drop and go. Just, I know I've had a number of mums and dads in the area raise with me the issues of parking congestion, and that certainly at morning drop-off and afternoon pickup, I've actually had some photos sent to me where cars are double parking on top of each other. I know we had widened the street in the area as a method to try to alleviate that. However, from the photos and the discussions I've seen, it's still a very real concern, and I'm not sure really in terms of safety, because we've got so many cars coming through at a short period of time, so many kids, so many families. I'm just not sure what else we could do about the matter, or if anything has come up through this discussion with the TAC. I'd really appreciate any insights or feedback that you could provide, Manager Darcy.
Yeah. Thank you, Manager.
Thanks, Councillor. Through you, Mr. Mayor. The one real benefit of the TAC meeting is the engagement with QPS, and for such an issue such as that, QPS's involvement is very, very important in being able to achieve those safer outcomes. We're also fortunate in the fact that the Cumbria office in charge is also the adopter cop for St Mary's, and he's a really active QPS member in trying to achieve some of those outcomes around parking. He's also the one who recommended to us around trying to modify some of that stop, drop, go signage to the loading zone signage to assist with being able to regulate that area, in being able to push the traffic through in order to reduce those occurrences like you just mentioned. So we're certainly looking at that a lot closer in order to assist with it from a signage point of view, because then from an enforcement point of view, he certainly has the ability to go and follow through on that. If we do have parents, not doing the right thing, I think there's an opportunity for a conversation first up. But if there starts to see, repeated infringements occur, I think there's an ability to take it further. But we'd love for the school community up there to try and follow the signage and the line marking to support, the safety of everyone up there at the end of the day.
Just a supplementary question. So just in terms of what you're saying there, some of it is actually around the way in which people aren't following the regulatory, or the way it's been redesigned. Like, is there a reason for that? Is it because we changed it with the widening of the street, or just keen to understand, because I know that was a wonderful outcome. The street widening has made a big difference, but I know it's still a real issue, and I'm not sure if there's any further really infrastructure solutions to that issue that we should be investigating or considering as a future Safe ST project or something.
The school has been really good to engage with. They gave us some good insight into understanding what else was there outside of the loading zone issues. They've been pretty good in advising us that it's just around that stop, drop, go operation. And I think it is around probably some of the school community adjusting to the new layout up there, because what it used to look like and what the way traffic used to behave 9 months ago versus the way it has been over the last 6 months is very different. Because of that widening, it's opened up two-way movements through there. But with that, changes in behaviour and now subsequently changes in actions, like you mentioned, there's only so much we can really do before it just comes back to people needing to do the right thing at the end of the day. So if we do have continued observations of non-compliance up there, then we need to help bring that to QPS's attention. They may be already aware of it at the same time, and it could be a concurrent observation and a discussion, obviously, with yourself that's occurred here. But we're happy to bring that back to the next TAC meeting for further follow-up, just to understand what are we doing in order to help encourage the safety of that area as much as possible. Like a lot of things in our region, we're not in full control of the operations of motorists, but we, in particular around schools, it's very, very important to get it right. And trying to have things in place to support that will go a long way to making that very clear to, road users.
Thank you, Manager.
Yeah, thank you. Certainly, I think if there is an opportunity just to have another conversation at the TAC around how things have changed or if that signage has been effective, like it just be really good to get that feedback through that committee because, yeah, I know there are hundreds of kids there every day, hundreds of families, so it's a very important issue. Thank you.
Councillor Duff. Sorry? Oh, Acting General Manager, thank you.
Oh yeah, through you, Mayor. Just a note on that one too. This school was actually one of the first projects on that list we just got the award for. So in actual fact, it's been recognised as we've done everything we can. It is really a compliance issue.
Thank you, General Manager. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you, Mr Mayor. I just, on the bottom of page 43, there's one item here, which is a request. It's item 5, request to lower speed limit on Oakenden Road at Butler Drive intersection. And there was a customer request received by South Bend Regional Council requesting to lower the speed limit from 100 to 80 and no speed related crashes at intersection with low traffic volumes and TMR to maintain 80k speed zone, and the item is closed. So that particular issue has been brought to my attention for the last, I would say, almost 18 years, because the community are really, really concerned about that. And it's not about the traffic, the cars, it's actually about the gophers, people from Butler Drive using that as their way to get to Proston, because that little community out there is that there's a lot of elderly people and they use those gophers, and there's a real concern that someone is going to hit one of those elderly people. There's a path that the community have tried to maintain off the road to allow people to transit back and forward off the highway, but that's not suitable for gophers, so that's a mode area. And I know that council in the past have put pipes to assist that, but it's certainly only for walkers, it's not for people on gophers. So I just wondered whether that was articulated when this particular item was presented to the forum of the Traffic Advisory Committee, whether there was a concern flagged about those people that are not actually in vehicles but actually rather in gophers. So I just wanted to flag that, as because I think it is a serious concern, and I know that the Proston Committee are going to be very disappointed to see that this has once again been the item is now closed. I think they'll be very disappointed.
Well, thank you, Manager.
Thanks, Councillor Duff. Through you, Mr Mayor, the item, you're absolutely right, it has been through a couple of times at the TAC meeting over the years. Oakenden Road or Boondoomba Dam Road for others who are not fully familiar with what the name of that road is. And Butler Drive is like a rural residential road just on the fringe of the urbanised Proston area. And it is under the 80k speed zone that's out there. The TMR representative, so what our actions were around forwarding this request to Main Roads to assist with being able to give them all the information and make an assessment and then bring it back to the meeting for discussion, and that's what subsequently happened here. They've used data essentially around looking at what crashes there were, any sort of near misses, anything that they could understand why they would want to modify the traffic behaviour of that area and considering and bringing it down from 80 to 60. And essentially the recommendation was, in the absence of any data to support changing it, they said that they'd prefer to keep it at 80 kilometres an hour. So there wasn't any really a discussion around the gophers at all, in all honesty, Councillor. It was around the data that supports the area, given that there's not anything to really warrant changing it at this point in time.
Thank you, Manager.
Sorry.
We'll stay with you, Councillor.
So could we reopen that on the grounds that is the concern? Because obviously it wasn't about the traffic volumes and different. It was more about those gophers. So I'd like to see that actually raised at the Traffic Advisory Committee and let the so that the Main Roads understand why that keeps coming forward, because there is a real concern.
Just on that, Manager Darcy, is there an opportunity for Councillor Duff to perhaps provide a presentation to the next TAC meeting on behalf of the community? Is that within the terms of reference? Do we know? Is that something that a councillor could do?
We do have 3 councillors in attendance. They can present that on Councillor Duff's behalf. Councillor Erkins is part of the committee. So there is an opportunity to bring all the material that you have at your disposal to present that on your behalf, to provide QPS and Main Roads representatives with a lot of what you're familiar with, and really advocating for the concerns of the residents out there as well as your own. The other discussion is around fit for purpose infrastructure to support those gopher movements as well, and whether the roads are the best profile of infrastructure to support that in the absence of those slashed areas not supporting gophers for those operations, and whether there needs to be a level of service consideration by council that really looks to upgrade the verge or the nature strip further than its current profile to support a movement like that. It could go a 180 degrees where TMR bring it back to council saying, well, have you considered putting in a footpath or some piece of infrastructure to support the operations of that for that area? So it could come back to council for further consideration at the same time.
Thanks very much, Manager. Okay, further speakers? Councillor Duff?
Sorry, through Mr. Mayor, so is it, what, do I just flag it again, or how do we get that back on the agenda? Sorry.
Yeah, we can basically put it on the agenda off the back of this meeting, councillors. So
Share the information with your
that should be
colleagues to bring
fine.
forward to the meeting. So Councillor Erkins, Councillor Jones and Councillor Henshin, I'm sure I'll be able to speak to that matter on your behalf if you provide them with whatever information you've got. Councillor Duff, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, further speakers? Nope. We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 7.4, Nanango Group Title Schemes Information Report at 46. Okay. General Manager O'May, is this one yours? No? It's Manager James. Thank you, Manager.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Evoca Place is part of a community title scheme that's on the edge of Millis Way in Nanango, and we received some correspondence a few months ago around consideration of asset transfer of the roads and drainage assets of that community title scheme. This item has a fair bit of history in it, also considered under the former Nanango Shire Council as well many years ago, and through the research and development of this report and being able to try and guide the residents who occupy that area as to how do we look at trying to do the asset transfer from a body corporate of private ownership across into council for consideration in basically adding to the asset register and it becoming part of council's routine maintenance and management over future years. So what we've done here is look through the process of how does that occur, and engagement with other teams in council, with our properties and town planning section. It's become aware to us that it essentially needs to go through a whole new planning approval process based on the Land Title Act. So it would become a new DA or development application. So it needs to be assessed against the current planning scheme with current current legislation, and then the infrastructure to support that needs to meet current day requirements as well. So it is around it going full circle, irrespective of the existing infrastructure. There would be a cost associated with that if they were to elect to proceed in wanting to follow through with the asset transfer. So this is around an awareness report saying, just recommending to council, there's a couple of ways that council consider this, and they are in the body of this report. So option 1 is around the status quo of what currently exists out there. Option 2 is around, depending on what that level of service is, they can use some of their funds held in reserve to go and do some of their own asset rehabilitation and maintenance associated with that. But then option 3 is around looking to follow through with that whole transfer of asset across to council, and there would need to be a fair body of cost in order to achieve that based on the current condition, and profile of that infrastructure out there at this point in time. The water and wastewater infrastructure is already a council asset, and it is interesting as to how this body corporate has evolved in achieving that over the years, because usually it's one or the other. It's all the infrastructure is held by body corporate, or it's all held by council. On this occasion, we've got different assets maintained by different bodies, which is unique in its own right. But Avoca Place is also one of 3 community titles through there, with the other 2 being Benin Court and Kuya Court as well. So it is, even though we've got Avoca Place providing us with some correspondence, essentially we've also got 2 other body corporates out there that also exist under similar circumstances. So the report is there for council's awareness and consumption as to being able to work with them on how they elect to proceed into the future.
Thank you, Manager. It's recommended that the committee recommends to council that council note the report, provide the options of this report to the appropriate body corporates for their information, and delegate any administrative actions to the Chief Executive Officer as required. Do we have a mover? Councillor Erkins, thank you. Second, Councillor Shoemaker. Speakers, Councillor Erkins.
Thank you. I'm actually quite familiar with the estate right from when they first developed it, and it's always been an issue because a lot of the people who have bought there, as reported by Elizabeth, who was here earlier, they were never actually, some of them were never actually told it was group title, so they didn't do searches very well, but they were also, a lot of them were led to believe that they didn't have to do anything. So I don't believe that they have any money in their account. I believe that a lot of the people who own blocks there actually are in arrears with the payments that they're supposed to be making to their to the body corp. But it's definitely an issue, and one of the issues is what was brought forward this morning in the petition is the drainage, which I said it affects a lot of people around the area. It's being caused by that subdivision, and it's flowing on to other places. And I just wondered whether it would be possible to make that into a benefited area where, because I don't believe they will have the money to do the roads, so where that's done and then it's passed on to those residents through rate payments. So I'm not really sure how that would actually work, but I can't see any other way that those residents out there would be able to maintain those roads or bring them up to a standard where council would want to take them on. But I do believe it is an issue, and sooner or later somebody will get hurt. I don't even know whether they're complying with all the things that they should for their body corp, but as I said, a lot of them are just unaware of what they should be doing. So, as I said, I don't know what the procedure is for looking at that, but if it could be just looked at as to whether it's possible to do it through a benefited scheme and then that payment passed on to those communities. And I believe you've got to have a fair percentage to do that in agreement, but maybe that's somewhere to start.
Thank you, Councillor. Any response from planning or infrastructure? Perhaps we could take that on notice, something to investigate. Acting General Manager.
Thanks, through you, Mayor. Just would like to point out those figures down the bottom that we sort of contingent figures of Avoca, Bonin and Kuya Court, they do not, that's only construction of infrastructure costs. That is not the town planning and process that you would have to go to do that. So those costs would be additional to those if we were to go along a benefited area type scenario.
Thank you, General Manager. Councillor Shoemaker.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to move a procedural motion to suspend standing orders so that we can actually have a proper discussion about this one, because there's quite a lot of information here and I have a number of questions.
Okay, do we have a seconder for such? Councillor Erkins. Those in favour? Okay. Yep, Councillor Shoemaker, Councillor Erkins and Councillor Henson are in favour. Those against? Councillor Duff and Councillor Otto. The procedural motion has been carried. Standing orders are now set aside while the discussion takes place. I suggest that we limit that to, as we would normally do, no longer than 30 minutes. Thank you. Over to you. Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just listening, chiming into what Councillor Erkins is saying, and I think we're thinking a similar train of thought, Councillor Erkins, and my question, because certainly I wasn't at council at the time, but on the outside looking in, I can remember the discussions that were had in the community around the Memorandum development and bringing it up to a standard. And I kind of feel like this is the reason why I wanted to suspend standing orders, is because from the information provided here on page 57 from King & Co, it says that Councillor Erkins is right, that we can levy a special rate or charge to a specific area. And I wanted to understand, in our experience, I know it's less than ideal, like I know it's not, I'm not making any assumptions, just want to explore all options. Is this very similar to what happened at Memorandum? And, you know, can you see some learnings or insights from that maybe can be applied to this process, is my question. Probably General Manager O'May.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so the difference that we have here is Memorandum, the infrastructure was constructed on public roads, so the roads existed. So we were actually doing infrastructure work on the road. The difference here is that there is no road there. There's basically a driveway there's a shared area to access all those properties. So we'd have no... Yeah, I just don't know. We would have to look at whether we would have to do a resumption of that area of land as part of the process before we could actually build a road. Like, we don't have any control over that. So even if we did want to provide a road there, again, if there's a mixture of different owners who some want that or don't want that, then that could complicate it. So whether it would mean actually going to that formal resumption, it would mean that it would be obviously opening it as a road. It would be a road open to all. It wouldn't be like at the moment. It is essentially a private access for those properties. So yeah, that would be the big difference. If it that I could see off the at the start is that there actually isn't a road reserve to build any infrastructure in at the moment. So that would, and that's what the guys are talking about. If you did the planning application, it would be to dedicate that. It would be to recreate the lots. Yeah, I'm not sure if there's enough to build the road, like whether there was enough room there, so whether it meant you'd have to subdivide and take a metre or two off the front of each block or something. Yeah, messy.
And from what I read here, if they go through a whole new planning application process, that could be messy too, in the sense that would the body corporate be the function responsible for building the road infrastructure, and at what point would they then, like, how would that work? Because if they go through a development application, we approve it, is it a similar process where they nominate that as a road, that build the road, and then we take on the asset at the end of that, but only after like inspections had occurred? Or I'm trying to think of like the time frame and what that actually really looks like in delivering on that option.
Yeah, essentially it is, because if we're trying to retrofit the application, so say if it was a vacant greenfield bit of land, and then whoever the applicant would be responsible to create the lots, create the infrastructure. We would only accept the infrastructure after a maintenance period, and making sure that it was at the appropriate standard. So so the application, that might be to do a new planning application may put them in no better situation, or it would basically require them to actually bring it up to the appropriate standards. Yeah.
And if a body corporate isn't actually functioning like correctly, or, you know, doing what it should in terms of having a nominated board, collecting money, you know, holding regular meetings, making decisions, all of those things, because that's certainly the feedback. I agree with Councillor Erkins. It's the feedback I've had from residents in the area. Is there something like us as a council is there a body or somebody who oversees the management of body corporates to make sure that they're functioning legally correctly. Is there anything we can do in that regard to sort of raise the flag that this is not happening? Like the money is not being collected, it's not being reinvested. It's an old deal that's fallen out. Is there anything we can do in that regard, General Manager O'May? Is there somebody who oversees body corporates that could get involved and help us here?
Yeah, that's probably beyond my scope. I'll be loath to answer just because I'm be guessing. So yeah, we're just something I have to take on notice and look into a bit more. I think there is advice in the King & Co advice about the payment of rates. It's like the benefit area. I think similar to the memorandum would be. I think if that's a solution, there's no ideal solution, but yeah, that's certainly something that I think we would just have to look at the implications of that.
Yeah, there is just looking here, there's an office of the Commissioner for Body Corporate who provide dispute resolution where we've got those living, investing or working with community title schemes in Queensland. Maybe a matter for referral to the Commissioner for Body Corporate, yeah.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. You know, I'm not totally sure of myself here, but if we were to go down the benefited area, I would thought Peter may be able to enlighten us that they'd actually have to do the town planning part of it so that we can actually, it is public road, so that we could do the benefited area. I wouldn't think that we could do the benefited area, do the planning, etc., because we'd be doing a development and an application on behalf of a private landholder.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I believe at one stage, this is some years back, and this is just, local gossip and knowledge. I believe that they did look at one stage at having those roads, they worked with council, they were going to do something, and I believe that the roads were actually not wide enough. So there was talk about whether they would resume, and it's, I mean, I don't know the solution, but I know that it's a big problem in our region. It's a problem. They've just never ever, nobody has ever went to them and said, you need to do this or this needs to be done. But as I said, they've tried a couple of times, I believe, in negotiating with council. I don't know whether that was South Burnett. It may have been Nanango. I suspect it was Nanango to start with. When they first did it, nobody in Nanango had ever heard of body, group title, and the guy who actually did it thinking he was going to be selling it to Tarong Coal or Rio Tinto or whoever it was then, and they didn't buy it. They developed their own in Lee Court. So I know that very early days they were selling those blocks for a bag of opals and a Mercedes car. That is how they did those first blocks, because people had them and they didn't know how to get them. So they ended up selling them now to homeowners who are left with this issue, not understanding what they've got themselves into, a lot of them, but sooner or later it's going to be, like what if there's an accident down there and they don't have their insurance? I'm not saying they don't have the insurance, I don't know, but sooner or later, and I wouldn't like to see somebody injured through the fact that sometimes the roads are really, really bad and nobody ever does anything except, I think every now and again a homeowner will come out with a gravel load of a barrow load of gravel and throw it in a hole, and that's really all that is being done. So, I'd like to think that we would look into some type of solution for it if possible. So, but I do realise it may end up, they may look at it and say the cost to the property owners may outweigh what their properties are worth. I'm not really sure. That's also something they would need to take under consideration. Thank you.
Yeah, certainly. That's my concern. Also, Councillor Erkins. There are a couple of things here. So on page 58 of the advice from King & Co, it does talk about potential liability exposure, and that I'm really interested in this. So if we become involved in the maintenance of the accessway, then council, we're assuming liability of an asset that we don't actually own. And the liability takes the same form as whenever council takes a positive step to exercise regulatory control or carry out maintenance of a road. So am I right in reading that basically if we do anything there, then we're kind of accepting that we will maintain that into the, even with all of this, like I'm just a bit confused. So if we go and say, well, we're just going to fix this for the time being, we're then taking control of, even with all the fact that this is overseen by body corporate as private access. I'm confused by that.
Through you, Mayor. Yeah, basically that is your correct interpretation, Councillor. If we touch it, we own it.
We own it.
We're responsible for what we've done, yeah.
So do these properties, when we, like, I imagine we've charged them, they're still paying general rates and they'd still be paying, when the road levy was introduced, they would have possibly paid a road levy, I imagine, for their contribution to the network. Like, I'd like to confirm that, because I think this is a long-standing issue. Like, I can remember back in the days when I worked for Nanhengo Shire Council, this was a problem then. And I just think, I feel for these people who are living there really unsure of who to go to, because body corporate's not functioning, no one knows where anybody's at with their fees, and no one's taking ownership or liability of the road. I'm really worried, like, if somebody did get hurt or if something bad did happen, I guess I'm confident in the King & Co. Should we sort of take some level of confidence in the fact that if an accident did happen, well, it's not our asset, we're not going to be liable for it. Am I reading that correctly? I guess I'm just a little bit worried about the motion, because there's a lot of information here to digest. There's the terminating community title under the Local Government Act is pretty specific, but it does, and from what I've read and understand, like, it would come at a cost for council. So I'm just not really sure, in all the investigation that you've done, the three options here, what option really, we've got a body corporate that's not functioning, so they can't do the maintenance renewal. Somebody's got to be held accountable for the fact that there's probably money in a bank account somewhere, or money that's not been collected. That's an issue. Terminating community title by going through that process and then going through a planning application process, like, would the body corporate make that who makes that application, and then do they then engage, like, the surveyor and everything to do all the work, and at the very end we sign off? Yeah, there's no easy fix here. I'm just a bit nervous about this one. The report's really comprehensive. I feel like this is a lot of information for council to get across, and in terms of the motion, it's sort of just allowing the CEO to make some administrative actions, but I'm not sure that's even going to find us a solution. So I guess I'm thinking about what's the long-term question mark solution here, and how do we unpack all of these options to decide together with the body corp what's actually achievable.
Yeah, I think one of the issues with the breakdown of the body corporate is you've got people there that have been paying their body corporate fees. So you might have, so there's 10 owners there, half of them have been paying in and maintaining, and where that money has gone or it's been used on maintenance, but there's people who haven't. So there's probably new people coming in that all of a sudden, you've got a $5,000 debt, or that you owe the body corporate. But if we go in and say if it's $500,000, we go in and build a new road, then that's $50,000 for each of those blocks. And so someone who's paid all their body corporate fees, there's no option for us to discount one. So if we introduce a special rate, it's all in, and so there's no, well, we can't just target these properties because they are behind in their body corporate. So that will be, so you'll have it'll be a solution well, it will be a solution for everyone, but some people will be paying because the body corporate has fallen down and half the people haven't contributed, or some people, and some of them are happy that they don't. If it is so, yeah, that's probably the issue there. That each of the landowners will probably have a different thing. So I think we could probably go and I'd be keen to update get some more legal advice updating on, because that previous stuff is probably 10 years old about that special rate, because that is potentially a solution there. Whether it's palatable for everyone, we know the Memorandum people up there. If you look back now, it's there's a great little estate there. At the time, there's a lot of landowners there that were very unhappy about that scheme. So yeah, it is a. And now I'm not sure if we're just looking at Avoca Place. I think if you went to expand that into the other two body corporate areas that are functioning, they would be very unhappy if council come in and said we're taking over this and charging it for the privilege. So I think, the other two body corporates would not be interested in that at all.
Councillor Erkins, how many properties are in this particular Avoca Place body corporate? How many individual lots?
I think you're probably looking at about 30 houses.
30.
But
Okay. So I've got the floor. Yeah. I'll come back to you. Sorry. So I'll come back to you. 30. So we've got 30 properties in Avoca Place. It would seem
That's 30 properties in Avoca and in Benin.
No, my question was in Avoca.
Yeah, I know, but I
We
can
don't
give
know.
you information that's relevant to what you're going to say.
Sorry. Okay. Well. Okay. So it would seem. I would. My view on this is that, and it may not be something that's palatable to them, but that it would be. I would have thought a simpler solution if the residents there who are obviously part of that title, that group title, were to able to work with the Commissioner for Body Corporate to re-establish a body corporate, to engage a contractor to do the works on their private access road to a standard that they are comfortable with, to ensure that they've all got liability insurance in relation to any accident that might occur on their service road. Because my concern is that even if we go into a special rate, the benefit schemes you talk about, we're going to have certain standards we've got to meet as a council. So we're not going to be able to go in there, I don't think, and do a quick fire, run over it with a bobcat with a bit of gravel. We're going to have to meet traffic regulation standards. So that's going to mean that because it's then a road, we're going to have to meet, otherwise we're going to be potentially liable. I would have thought it would be much more cost effective for them to form a body corporate, pool some funds, get a private contractor to come in on a as-needs basis and provide minor maintenance on the road up to a standard that they're happy with. Keeps council out of it. It means that we don't have regulatory provisions to comply with, and it would make it a lot easier for everyone concerned, and I would have thought a lot cheaper. Of course, that is dependent upon whether or not they're actually prepared to come together and form a body or take over the body corporate into the future and chip in their fees each year to fund that maintenance of the road. But I would have thought that that would be the cheapest and easiest, for want of a better term, solution to this problem without bringing council into the fold. So keen to hear your thoughts on that, Councillor Erkins.
Okay. I'm under the impression that that is one group title. I don't think it is 3 group titles. So I don't think we can work on one, not the other. Cougar Court, I'm pretty sure that people at the end of Cougar Court own properties both sides. That Cougar Court is no longer used as a road by anyone, just by that person. But I'm pretty sure that Avoca Place and Benin Court, a lot of the properties that are actually there are actually rental properties. So those owners would probably be less inclined to contribute, whereas the 2 people we had in here today are both owner-occupiers. But I do know there are owner-occupiers in the other places. One of the reasons that they would probably be more inclined to agree to something would be if they thought it would add value to their property. But I understand what you're saying, Mr. Mayor, and I probably think that for them would be the solution. However, the petition that we had this morning is about drainage, and I don't know that they would be able to just fix that drainage problem with just getting someone to come in. And the drainage there affects not only those people in the group title, but it affects people behind them, which are freehold properties.
Yeah, so there's 3 group title plans, 5.5, 5.6 and 5.7. But you're suggesting there's only one body corporate that oversees all titles? Okay. All right. Well, that's something that obviously they'd have to investigate. I guess I'm probably keen to see that when our Chief Executive Officer does go back to them, that we perhaps as a council look to put that forward as the first option, that they consider independently engaging with the authorities to, I suppose, bring the body corporate back to life, put in place processes whereby it is compliant, and as part of that process, obviously there'd be a requirement that they raise the revenue required each year from each landholder to be able to then fund the maintenance works on the common land area, basically the road. So if that's of any help, Madam Acting CEO, in terms of those negotiations, but keen to hear what other councillors think. Councillor Henson, did you want to add anything while we're in open discussion?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just looking at the map and another development that probably wasn't developed just up the speed, but I think your suggestion is a great starting point. Yeah, and as reading through the legal implications of it, and then if we look at, and as Manager Lowe has mentioned earlier on page 49, in the scoping and estimated cost, that's like $1 million before you start. And as far as acquiring a metre off the front of everybody's block, and you touched on it, Mayor, being compliant with roadworks in there, I think certainly that's a place to start with body corporate and get it operational and get people talking and get them involved in it.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Councillor. Yeah, thanks. We'll keep going. Councillor Schumacher. Thank you.
Yeah, a couple of, I guess I'm really mindful that this legal advice is over 10 years old now. It is 12 years old. I don't know if that really does change anything. I do think this just has a giant question mark for our council and those ratepayers. I was reading, I thought it was interesting that council maintains the water and sewerage assets, but we don't, within this area, as it's agreed upon on the original deed of agreement. So I just think it's interesting that we do those things, but not the road. Like, that obviously was a decision to try to cut the costs of the development, or, I'm making assumptions, but that's very bizarre that we maintain the water and sewerage. I guess we own the larger assets, and that they maintain the road. Like, is that common in other body corporate agreements that we have?
Work where the road can be a standalone item that can be maintained by things. So, yes, I wouldn't know if it is exactly common, but it was obviously a decision made at the day.
Because we're a utility, not much different to electricity, so we're standalone. No council in their right mind would let a private body corporate run their water network qualities. Yeah.
The Sunrise Court there on the map, has that been divided? Like, is that also another division like this, or that's completely different? It's freehold, so that's not. Yeah, okay. I'm happy with sort of the discussion that we've had. I do think maybe the legal advice, the time, it's been 12 years since we've reviewed this issue. I'm probably a bit concerned if this has still been going. If we knew 12 years ago this was a problem and it's still a problem 12 years later, I think that is a concern, and I hope that perhaps the office of the commissioner may be able to help these people, because I can understand the disparity in their views.
I would think from what you've said about the body corp that they have someone to go to, probably to hand back to them, is they really need to get their house in order, get their body corp sorted out, get everyone joining it, then come back to council with a proposal then, whether it be to ask for a benefited scheme or how it could be. But as I said, they probably need to get their house in order first and then come back to council for, because at this stage, we don't know how many of them want to do something anyway.
Through Mr Mayor. Yeah, I think that, I agree that they need to get their house in order, but none of those options suggest that. I think we need to, if we're going to support the recommendation, there needs to be another option, because that, even option 2 just suggests that they use their funds, the reserve funds, to actually fix the infrastructure. Option 3 is just to go back to council, and the option 1 is to do nothing. So none of those options has articulated what you have suggested, Mr Mayor. So I think that in the recommendation we need to put an option 4, that they actually go get their body corporate in order, and then come to a conclusion.
Okay, we can certainly add on to that motion. Note the report for the options of this report to the body corporate for information, comma, and include an option for the FOR, sorry, Bree, for the body corporate FOR, for the word for, not letter 4. Not option 4. Well, it actually is option 4, with an option number 4, with an option for the body corporate to, for the body corporate members to, to engage, with property holders and re-establish. Oh yes, property owners, and the commissioner for body corporate. And community management, commissioner for body corporate and community management, Bree. With a view to re-establish the body corporate as a functioning legal entity in meeting its responsibilities, including maintaining the access service way. I just use that term because that's the one that Kick & Co used, access service way. Okay, how does that look? Any changes, committee? Not my best work, but
Are we going to include drainage?
yes, access service way and drainage. Yep. Yep. Yep.
Mr Mayor, I would
Yes.
like to see in there that we give them the opportunity to re-establish their body corporate, to bring it up to scratch, and then give them the option to then approach council to negotiate their options. Because I think these other things that are in there is no way they're capable of doing
So,
that.
okay, and so Bree, then after there, you're in the right spot, backspace, and to report back to council with the body corporate members preferred option? Comfortable with that? Okay. Councillor Erkins, are you happy to take support that change to the motion? Councillor Schumacher, are you happy to support that change to the motion? Thank you. Further speakers? Okay. No? We'll Councillor Schumacher, yep.
Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to move a procedural motion to reinstate standing orders.
Thank you, Councillor. We have a seconder. Councillor Duff. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, we're back into normal business. So we have a mover and a seconder. If there's no further speakers, committee, are we happy to go to the vote? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 7.5, LRCO Phase 3 extension at 59. General Manager O'May, would you mind leading us? Councillor Schumacher.
Mr. Mayor, I just have an amendment to the officer's recommendation.
Please go ahead.
I'd like to move that council note this report for information and that a workshop be held to discuss and consider the long list of suggested projects and through a process of prioritisation develop a short list for consideration by council. Workshop, and I guess the workshop to be held prior, so around September, October, to be held. I'm happy just to make it to be held in terms with whatever timeframes we have to meet. I just think it's important. Yes, I'll move that anyway, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have a seconder? Seconder? We'll just, I think Councillor Henson's got his hand up. We've got Councillor Henson second the motion. We'll go to Councillor Schumacher to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's really exciting that we have received an extension to the LRCI funds and an opportunity to invest another $1.6 million in our local economy that is not raised by our ratepayers. I think that is such an important opportunity and one that we should never take for granted and always look at through a multi-criteria lens. And that's what I see through the project prioritisation tool. It's an opportunity for us to look at all of these projects that we have, all of the ideas that we have, all the things that the community is really passionate about, and actually together as a team work through, give them a scoring, work through. I know we may not agree and I respect that. I think there's certainly merit in that, but I think it's an opportunity for us to be across everybody's priorities, to put them through a proper process and to assess how we can best invest that $1.6 million, because I'm so mindful that we have got more projects than we do money. And that has been a consistent theme I've certainly seen in these 2 years of my sitting at this table with council and trying to represent the people of our region. I just think this is a simple workshop, a simple process where we can at least, everybody can have an opportunity to put their ideas forward and at least go through a process of giving them a prioritisation score, which I do believe is in line with the QTC guidelines that we learned more about this year. I also think it's in line with responsible and sound asset management. And I think it's also fair when we consider the many priorities that we're consistently trying to juggle and trying to find ways to fund them. So I think it's exciting that we've got that funding. I think it's an opportunity like we never do, that we should never take for granted, and that by all means, I'm just so mindful there's a long list of projects. I don't want to create community expectation that we can deliver on them all, and I'd like to see us as a council come together and try to work through some of these things and develop a project process to best invest this money in our community, because cherry picking projects or deciding what we think might be right, I think we've got to make evidence-based decisions, and I've learned a lot in 2 years. There's still a hell of a lot to learn, and I think this would be a great opportunity to put that tool to work and to have a team discussion about the many priorities of this region that we're all very passionate about.
Thank you, councillor. Further speakers? Councillor Erkins.
I can see great credit in what Kirsty has moved here.
Councillor Shoemaker.
Sorry, Councillor Shoemaker has moved here. However, one of the things I think that we always have to keep in mind, that what's important to me and my community are not necessarily important to somebody else. If you live in Hivesville, you have different priorities and different needs, and really what someone has if they live in Nanango. So I think it really is a good idea that we sit there and talk, but I think we all have to be open-minded, and a little bit like when we went and did the road tour, that we take into consideration what things are like in other people's regions, because in other people's towns, because as been pointed out to me, everyone's rates have been set that they're fair across the region. However, that's a discussion to have at a different time. But if you live in Hivesville, or you live in Proston, or you live in Cumbia, you know, you don't have the same amenities and facilities as if you live in a bigger town. So I think we all have to keep that in mind, that sometimes we have to give a little more to smaller communities because they do miss out on things that bigger communities have.
Okay. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just, on that, the back of the, like we had the discussion earlier about the 4 projects put forward, that's the Wando Industrial Estate, the Harley Street, Wando Drainage, and the Alfred Street and Gore Street. Just wondering if that's, can be after, like that workshop could be after these have been actually, because the motion was that they're scoped and costed. That way we'd be able to make an informed decision at least on those 4 projects. Is that something that could be included in the motion?
For Councillor Shoemaker.
That was certainly my intent, Councillor Duff. So it's why I was probably struggling to determine a month, because I don't know. I know I was listening to General Manager Lowe earlier, who said that September was tight, and I can't remember if we locked in November or October. So I guess I think the more information we have for all of the projects that everybody's been considering, the better. I'm very happy for this workshop to be when those are scoped. So what time? November? So do you think the workshop in December would be suffice? And then I guess that really does depend on our funding guidelines, how quickly they push us for the projects. But that's probably a question maybe to General Manager O'May or Manager Susan. Do you think if we set this time frame and then they come to us and say you must do it now, I guess we'll bring this forward, is my thinking. Thoughts?
Any expected dates on guideline for the extension phase?
Through you, Mr Mayor. So that's probably the unknown, that we don't know when the guidelines will be released. I would assume they will be released before December, and then there'll be a period of time where they'd request a list of projects. So, yeah, certainly when that came, we might have to bring it forward.
Could we pop November in there, noting that if you've done the work and it's coming to us, you know, standing committee meeting, or that we can factor the workshop in around whenever that report is done? Because I am very mindful in my experience here, those guidelines, well, they say here's the money, sit on it, and then they say here, and now tell us now today. So happy to work around, but yeah, I do think that's the intent. As much information as we can to assess every project to make sure that we are, you know, responsible and accountable to our community in the way in which we allocate the funding.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hench, anything you want to add?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Shoemaker and Councillor Erkins, for the supportive. I mean, you know, as we've seen previously, we have so many, you know, projects that we'd all like to be scoped and priced and certainly, as mentioned before, and certainly the ones mentioned this morning are all part of that, those 4, to go into a big bucket to see what we can come out with a benefit to the whole region, not just 1 or 2 communities or divisions, so to speak. So, yeah, thanks, Councillor Shoemaker, and Councillor Erkins fully take on. I mean, we have all these little towns and villages. So, yeah, look forward to workshopping moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Look, I'm going to speak strongly against this. Not because I don't want to see us have this go through a process, but I'm probably keen to see us go through a different process. Probably 2 points of real concern here is that I gave a very strong commitment to the community when I was elected as mayor that I would not engage in decision making behind closed doors, and that our council would open up through standing committee meetings, conversations and discussions and debate in relation to decisions of council. My concern is that this is framed in such a way that, and I've listened to some of the discussions, so some of the statements made here about Councillor Erkins making decisions and everyone being considered. To my mind, a workshop behind closed doors is not the place to do that. That the Local Government Act, the regulations make it very clear that unless Section 254J is applied, that these conversations and debates and decisions should be made in an open forum. Even if we are tossing around and giving guidance to staff as to which projects we see as high priority, to my mind, that is decision making. And to my mind, that is in contravention of the... I'm not comfortable with that from a legislative point of view or from an ethical point of view. I would much rather have an open discussion in a standing committee meeting. I'm happy for projects to be put forward and scoped and costed in a preliminary manner, because that information will be needed if we're going to apply a prioritisation tool. From what Cody presented, my understanding that his prioritisation tool includes factors such as cost, factors such as whole of life cost. Now, if we're going to embark on a process of prioritising projects without that information in advance, then how do we do that? Because we won't have all the data we need to feed into the tool. So I'd prefer to see that we actually put forward projects, we have them preliminary scoped, preliminary costed, including whole of life costing. We then allow our team, our professional staff, to feed that into the prioritisation tool and bring back a report that says, here's all the projects you've put forward, council, here's how they've ranked on the prioritisation list, and it's now over to you as the governing body to make a decision in an open community forum about which projects you're going to fund and which ones you aren't. It's not the job of the staff to make those decisions. It's the job of the staff to provide information upon which we can make decisions, and the prioritisation tool is a mechanism that they could use to do that. But as I think, our staff have made it very clear, and Cody and I know James made it very clear, the tool is not a decision-making tool. It is a guide for us to make decisions as a council, and we take it into consideration as one of the key factors when we're making those decisions. But community and political factors also have to come into play here. So I would much prefer that we had a motion that went to putting together a list, having some preliminary scoping, some preliminary costing done, and I know they're only going to be estimates because there's no way that Manager Darcy's going to have the resources to scope up a long list of projects. But we need to be able to at least get some data around what it could cost, what will be the whole life costing, allow the staff to independently prioritise it through the application of the tool, and then bring that to an open standing committee meeting for discussion. That would be my preference. So for that reason, I'll be voting against this, because I think that's probably a better option. So anyway, Councillor Shoemaker, to closing comments. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I strongly disagree with your statements. I do believe it's difficult when you're in a standing committee with 7 minutes, which I know is enforced, whereby you only get 7 minutes to speak to a motion, make a decision or amend it. I feel that a much more thorough process is all sitting around the table and putting everything out there and sharing all of the information so that we come back and make a decision that we're comfortable with. I'm not comfortable with making decisions after we've received 15 emails, we haven't talked about it, and then we throw a bit of local politics in there and it becomes a mess. I'm tired of dividing my community. I'm tired of the disruption. I want to see us work as a team. I won't play politics with local issues. We're a local government. We're closest level of government to the people. We need to be listening to the people and working together, not having, by all means, we have the debate. I think that's important. We have rigorous conversation. That's what this chamber is for. What I'm proposing here, a workshop, is about sharing information. It's about talking to each other, and it's about using this tool, as you have stated, Mr. Mayor, is not a decision-making tool. It's a tool to help us form up some ideas around what could be, how we take that long list of projects and bring it into a shorter list. I'm not proposing that we're making decisions behind closed doors. I absolutely fully support the changes that we've made to our structure, whereby we have standing committee meetings and no longer portfolio discussions behind closed doors. I absolutely fully support that. This is about taking some time as a team to work with our elected and our employed bodies to work together to look at the facts and simply just that. I'm not talking about making assumptions, making decisions, influencing ideas. I'm talking about taking some time to look at the facts for every single project so they're equally weighted and equally thought through. And then by all means, you bring back to this chamber your view, and I look forward to debating and discussing that with you because I think that is key to governance. So, Mr. Mayor, I disagree. This is not about making decisions about closed doors or influencing outcomes. This is purely about sharing information and having a good discussion about all of the projects that everybody has on the list, many of which have actually got costings because we've discussed them in this chamber before.
That concludes the
Mr. Mayor, is
debate.
it possible for me to move an amendment?
Yes, you may.
Is it possible, rather than have a workshop of councillors, is it possible to have a workshop inviting our community to come along and maybe our community put forth some ideas on what they think is important, rather than maybe us just listening to a couple of people on what's important, and then from there we can move forward with ideas, because I'm sure that there are a lot in our community that do have good ideas that maybe they haven't come up and spoke. But I like the idea of us discussing what's to be done. And I think if I could move that amendment, that the workshop to be held with the community, inviting them to bring forth projects that they feel they would like council to take under consideration for the future.
So, Bree, we just need to put in that the committee recommend to council as well when you're ready. Councillor Atkins, would that be an open community forum to all members of the community to
Yes.
attend?
Yes,
Okay. Can we build that in? Would you be prepared to build that into your motion?
yes.
That council hold an open community forum
Yep.
rather than a workshop?
And I don't know whether we want to do it in one spot or whether as councillors we go to all the different, I mean, I'm happy to go to all the different areas, you know.
So if we just put
Kingeroy,
a slash
Menango,
S, Bree.
Proston, Mergen.
So if we go community forum slash forums, so if we slash S the
yep.
forum, yeah.
And it would be nice to see, if we do decide to do at different places, that all councillors look to attend one another's areas as well, so that they get the feedback from everyone.
And so would we say, Bree, at the end of that, perhaps if we could say with your permission, councillor, for LRCI funding, or do you want to make this broader?
Well, I think, I don't think I want
For
to
capital
limit
projects
it.
broadly?
Yeah, I don't think I want to limit to
For capital
different
projects.
funding. It's just so that we all know what our community actually see as being important to them.
All right, so we won't change that then, brief consideration for council's future capital program.
Yep,
Okay, are you comfortable with that, councillor?
I am.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Duff, okay.
Mr. Mayor, I see that as a separate motion. I don't disagree. I think it's a great idea and I'm more than happy. I think it goes to the community plans. I think we need to do that. But I don't see how that helps us with that like, I certainly see what you're trying to achieve. I think the two are different. I think my motion was specific around the LRCI funding. This is around asking all projects for our future capital program, and I think the timing would work nicely with the budget. So I think that's a great idea. I want to do that, but I guess my thinking was around how we run these through the prioritisation tool. So I think the amendment is different to the
Yes,
actual motion.
I'll take that. I'll take that. We'll take that as a foreshadowed motion, councillor. I think it's sufficiently different to be seen as a foreshadowed motion. Madam CEO? Yes, I've conferred with the CEO and she agrees. So we'll take that as a foreshadowed. We'll go back to the original motion. Councillor Shoemaker had the floor. Debate's now been concluded. Your light's on, Councillor Perkins. We're going to go to the vote. Those in favour? Okay, Councillor Shoemaker and Councillor Henshin. Those against? Councillor Erkins, Duff and Otto. The motion has been defeated. We'll now, we'll stick with the original item. I'll now move that the council note this report for information. Full stop, Bree. So another motion if we can, and then we'll go to your foreshadowed motion after that. I just want to get this report dealt with. First of all, the council note this report for information. I'll move that. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Duff. Speakers? Those in favour? Councillor Otto, Erkins and Duff. Those against? Councillor Shoemaker. Councillor Henshin is against. So that's been carried 3 votes to 2. We'll now go to your foreshadowed motion. Councillor Erkins, please put forward your motion. Thank you. Council is the councillors. You might just put inviting residents, Bree, please, rather than them. Inviting residents to bring forward projects they wish to draw to council's attention for future capital, for the future capital works program, or for future capital works programs, sorry, because they go across different departments. And just take the word "the" out, Bree, if we could. Sorry to interject there, Councillor Erkins. Are you comfortable with that as presented on screen? You are. Okay. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Duff. Okay, you can speak to your motion now. Thank you, Councillor Erkins.
I think since being in here, I see a lot of people bring up projects, and sometimes I wonder whether they are actually what our community want. Sometimes I know myself, you can get fixated on something that you actually want. Doesn't necessarily mean it's what the majority of your community wants. It all depends on where your focus is to what's important, and I think it would be good for us all to hear what residents think. So then if Councillor Duff brings something up that she wants done in Mergen, well, I've had an opportunity to listen to what the community want in Mergen, and vice versa all across the region. We all think that we're here, we all should be here to be looking after our community, so let's go out and listen to what our community think.
Further speakers? Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, I absolutely agree. I think this is a great idea, and the timing, if we were to do this before the end of the year, I think the timing aligns nicely as it would dovetail into our next budget discussions. And to be honest, I'd like to start them much sooner than we did this year, because it was quite an effort and quite a lot of work that went into that. I don't disagree. I think it's a great opportunity to review some of the ideas that have been put forward for our community plans and maybe finish them off for each area. I do think we have to be mindful of community expectations, and I do think we have to be honest with our community in the way in which we run these discussions. I think it's important that this isn't seen as us writing, bringing your wish lists and endorsing everything, or that every town will then go into competition with each other around who gets what. I would hate to see that. I think that division doesn't serve anybody. I would, however, like to hear from our community. I think it's a good time, being 2 years into our current corporate plan, to have a discussion about what is important to community, what they've seen, and where we're going from here. I do think we do need to consider we've got significant asset management plans. We've also got significant 10-year capital works programs. And I think this would be a great opportunity to present some of that information to our community and make sure they understood that sometimes some of the things council does, while they're not seen or overly exciting projects, they are important projects, and they do attribute to a much bigger picture, which is our long-term sustainability as a region. Things like trunk infrastructure repairs. We won't be pulling money from our capital works programs for really critical infrastructure to fund things that we would like. And I think we have to be honest with our community in that regard. I think we've got some enormous challenges in the coming years. I think the way interest rates and things are increasing, the cost of living is increasing. I think it will be a challenge for our community to certainly grant everybody's wishes and keep rates low and within a reasonable level. And I absolutely think community, we need to get better at grant funding and going for grants and getting hungry for grants. And this is a great opportunity to help us prepare our pipeline of projects and concepts and ideas that could feed into that. But yes, I will definitely support this motion, knowing that this is about the bigger picture, not just that LRCI funding allocation. It's about a really good opportunity to check in with our community, see how we've been going with the capital works that we've delivered to date, and get some ideas in the lead up to the next budget as to what may be achieved. But I'm not ever going to be a representative who makes a ton of promises to our community and then takes them into action and battle against each other, because that's just not who I am, and I don't agree with it. It doesn't align with my values. We need to be honest with our community around some of the challenges we face. We need to definitely take their views on board and definitely do what we can to deliver on that. But yes, I think we do have to be mindful that there is no magic pie or magic wand. There is no easy way to make sure every community gets exactly what it wants. Unfortunately, that's just the reality of our balance sheet. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support this recommendation. I just would like to see us go back out to the community with those draft community plans at the same time, because I think that the community are wondering what happened with that. This is, if we go out there and say, well, present us with what you'd like to see happen, and they've already done that. They did that earlier when we had a very robust procedure around getting those community feedback before Councillor Erkins was in the chamber. And so I just think that we should take those draft plans out and just use this opportunity to actually say, well, this is what the feedback we've already got. How's it looking for you? Just to support what we've already done. That's just my feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, look, if I just give Council an update, it's certainly my intention to bring forward to the next Corporate Standing Committee meeting I suppose, a report as part of my portfolio report into where we're at with the community plans and what my proposed process for Council to consider is moving forward. There has been delays in formulation of draft documents because exec services have just had so many issues with staffing, with COVID, and we just haven't had the resources, quite frankly, to put that together. We had made a start, and the work is halfway through the process. But my intention was to come back with a recommended process for Council to say, let's consider this. I'd like to see us take all of us together, all 7 of us, as well as our senior leadership and executive leadership team along with us on that journey. So I really wanted to broaden out the process, make it a more inclusive process for council, certainly go back to the community, but certainly get feedback from council and formulate a process first. So, okay, well, we've collected stage 1 data. What are we going to now do with that data? And how do we want to move forward in terms of progressing that data through into a draft document that we can take back out to our community for consultation? So looking forward to bringing that to the next standing committee meeting. Councillor Duff, yeah. Okay, Councillor Henson, did you want to add anything before we wrap up?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, and certainly I agree with everything. And I guess just in Councillor Erkin's defence, having not been in chambers as long, there had been a lot of work go with communities. There's a list, and I'm sure all of my fellow councillors will remember, and yourself, Mayor, a list that was worked through on many different fronts, be it Works for Queensland or LRCI funding, and I think there was 100 and something suggestions there. So there's been work done certainly with communities and ideas prior to this. So yeah, that's fine. I just and I think we'd all be aware of what some of those are, from skate parks in Marulan to RV stopovers in Cumbria and parks and the likes. But there's a massive list that would be handy, and I certainly will have it somewhere in my paperwork, as I'm sure many others have. But if we can find that, would be very convenient as well to run through along this process. But appreciate everybody's thoughts and inputs into this. Yeah, a lot of work.
Thank you, Councillor Henson. Councillor Erkins, anything to conclude the debate? Thank you.
As a member of the community, prior to my time on council, I can tell you that I have been to a lot of council meet the community meetings, most of which are very poorly attended by the community, and sometimes turn into a council criticising exercise. So that's definitely not what I'm proposing, and I would really like to see us get some media or some announcements out to say what it is that we're looking at doing. I agree with what Councillor Shoemaker says on not going out and promising things, and I don't think that most of our community are not silly. They know they're not going to get a great big water park at Tipperary Flat, although I did think of putting it up. But I think so long as we are upfront with our community and encourage our community to put forward their ideas, and if it's a stupid idea, let's just tell them straight up, you're not going to get it. Go to the Gold Coast if you want to go on those things. But let's try and encourage our community to come and let them meet everybody and let them see that everyone has projects that they want to put forward, and it has to be done on a priority basis on what we think is best for the area. But I think it's just getting them involved. It's a little bit like the council meetings, and when I ask people, have they seen them? Honestly, most of them tell me, we flicked on, we watched it for 5 minutes, and it was so boring that we turned it off. Somebody else told me they put it on to go to bed at night because it sends them to sleep. So, but let's have our meetings and let's encourage our community to, bring forward realistic ideas and let them know that we're there and we want to listen to them, so long as they come with good ideas. Thank you.
Would you like to have another go and tell us what you really think, Councillor? No, look, thank you very much, Councillor Erkins. That now concludes the debate. We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 7.6 LRCI funding variation options. That's at 78 on the agenda. General Manager O'May, is this one yours? Sorry, no. Sorry, Councillor Duff, you've got your line on. Councillor Duff. Sorry, managers. Yeah.
So I wanted to move a recommendation or a motion. So I've actually given it to Bree there.
Yes, please proceed.
That council reallocate $250,000 from the Works for Queensland funding in 22-23 for the Kingeroy Memorial Park Master Plan to the Tipperary Flat Park renewal.
Thank you, councillor. Are you comfortable with what's presented on screen as the motion? Reflects the motion. Thank you.
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Erkins has seconded. To you to speak to the motion. Thank you, councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I saw the officer's recommendation and that it was around those projects that are involving roads, and that was the LRCI funding. And I'm very, very concerned about delaying those projects. I think that the roads projects are vital, because when we did the road tour, there was roads that was sitting in the front with Manager Searle, and some of those projects, if we don't do them sooner rather than later, they'll turn from reseals into rehabilitation, which is a huge expense for council. I had a look through the budget to see some of the projects that could be options to just put on hold, and there's $580,000 in a concept plan for Memorial Park. There's $200,000 for the pool construction drawings and a further $95,000 for the Kingeroy pool. So I spoke to General Manager O'May, and that $580,000, there's no projects actually scoped in that. So I don't see that as critical. There would still be over 250,000, 200 whatever left, over 300,000 left to do any projects to get started with Memorial Park. But that project for Tipperary Flats is an urgent project. We tried to get it through Works for Queensland earlier and failed. The 175-year anniversary is fast approaching. We have this window of opportunity to get that done. So I believe that this is all doable. And I also know that a variation should not to the Works for Queensland projects, because they're both within the same category. I'm of the belief that the same category of open spaces, it won't require a variation to the works. So it's just something that could easily be transitioned from that concept plan to actually Tipperary Flats. So I'm just putting that to the chamber. Hopefully I can get the support of the chamber. Thank you.
Further speakers? Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I certainly don't disagree. I do think we have to find the funding for Tipperary Flat. I think that project is important to the community. I am, though, and I don't disagree with trying to find the funding in the existing allocation if that works. My concern is, though, that that we had put that money aside for Memorial Park. And I'm just probably curious because obviously Councillor Duff has had conversations that I haven't been privy to, what this actually means for the future of the Memorial Park project and master plan. I probably want some clarity around that through General Manager O'May before I consider this, because there's no report around this, so we're working off the fly.
Thank you, GM O'May.
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, as council be aware, we're currently doing the master planning for the Memorial Pool and Memorial Park. So that current project is currently underway. The $580,000 was a nominal allocation, so that there was funds available to do projects that might have been identified through that master plan. So because that work hasn't been completed yet, there is no identified project. As Councillor Duff says is correct, there's no specific projects identified to it. It was basically just to have, and the idea was that if there was some funding there, we didn't want to do all this, the master planning and have community expectations that we've just done this work and then not be able to deliver something from them. So yeah, it is an allocation. I would picture that once we do have the master plan and we do see what projects are, then that will come back to council to decide on what gets progressed, and certainly through that master plan we are looking at staged projects, because like we could spend an unlimited number, I suppose, on that. So we are trying to do projects that try to do the master planning in projects that you can do in bite sizes. The pool itself, redevelopment, will be a completely separate. It will mean significant funding and grant applications. That's what the 200,000 that we've got in the capital works budget is to progress that, like get those construction drawings, get it shovel ready, so that if there is a BBRF application, we can go and obtain those millions of dollars that will be required for that project. But yeah, this is, as Councillor Duff said, it isn't identified for specific projects. I would see it would need to be supplemented in future budgets just when we have got those projects identified.
Thank you, Jim Elmo. We'll stay with you, Councillor Schumacher.
So there was the last financial year budget, we had tried to put $500,000 aside for the Kingeroy swimming pool, and I believe that was consumed and that wasn't actually put aside at all for the pool. I want to confirm that.
Through you, Ms Mayor. So in previous budgets we have, instead of our funded depreciations, instead of spending it on capital works, we have been putting some aside. I think last year's budget it was there wasn't available funded depreciation to make that allocation back to reserve. So there is funding, maybe $2 million or something in there for future renovations or replacement of the Kingeroy pool. That will be a drop in what the actual figure will be, but so you are correct. Last year I think the funded depreciation wasn't there to make that put that into reserve.
Yep, and my final question, so just with the Memorial Park then, would it be a project that could be considered under LRCI funding? If something did come out of the scope that we were cutting back on because of this decision?
Through the chair, yes, it definitely would. Like, so that's local roads and community infrastructure, so it certainly could be part of the a future LRCI allocation. Probably just the other point Councillor Duff made as far as the Works for Queensland, Tipperary Flats would fit in under the open space refurbishments, similar to where the Memorial Park would go. So Works for Queensland is this multi-year project, so multi-year program. So we have got 22, 23, 23, 24 to complete those. So yeah, that's probably just the other part that just mentioned on the Works for Queensland program.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. So certainly based on that information, look, I'm not against it. I definitely want to see Tipperary Flat completed. I did want to point out though that in the last round of Works for Queensland funding from the COVID funding that we received, Council did invest significant funds into a number of parks in Kingeroy, in Nanango, and that there has been very little investment in any of our parks here in Kingeroy in my term as councillor. I have seen a barbecue shelter erected at Apex Park and a table. I still see the broken concrete seats that have been at Memorial Park since the day I started as a councillor, still there. I have seen, yes, we spent some money on erecting the community's big peanut and replacing some shelters there. That's a great outcome. There has been holes in the softball and there is no playground. The playground equipment needs replacement. I just want to point out across the 24 parks across Kingeroy, and not all of them have playground equipment, this council's investment has been minor. We have definitely replaced some tables and things that needed replacement, and we've tried to stretch some funding to help out in our parks. And I just point this out because I know parks are very important. I have 2 children myself who are playing on the same playground equipment, sitting in the same seats that they've sat in since the day they were born here in Kingeroy. And I do think, I do want to see this happen, and I do think if it's project ready, shovel ready, happy to make this judgment and fund it through this way. But I do want to point it out that there have been a number of projects that I've put up for parks in Kingeroy that have not been invested in, and yes, that's a shame. But in the same instance, I was excited that we may actually have an opportunity to progress something for the children and families of Kingeroy here in Memorial Park, and certainly for the families across the South Burnett who stop and eat their lunch there in Memorial Park, which is our premier park and probably most used park in the whole South Burnett. But happy to finish the works that we'd started in Nanango, complete all the parks in Nanango, so that then we can move through to another town. Because one, I am also very mindful of, I spent some time in Mergen last week, and some of the graffiti and some of the things I noticed in the park there in Mergen definitely needs addressing as well. So I'm happy to make this decision based on the fact that it fits in the Work for Queensland funding allocation, but I am just want to point it out that there has been very little done to improve the playground or atmosphere of parks here in Kingeroy, where children do play too.
Thank you. Councillor Erkins.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I actually found it very surprising that 580,000 was allotted to drawings or concept plans or scoping Memorial Park when Tipperary Flat has had 25 years from when it was first established and nothing has been done for 25 years.
I might just interject there, Councillor. Sorry, General Manager May did clarify that the 580,000 was set aside as a nominal allocation for actually delivery of works, to actually do building work in Memorial Park. So just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
200,000 for the drawings for the pool. But anyway, the parks in Nanango, I know the parks in Nanango have had some work done, but the Nanango community themselves raised $80,000 towards the park. So that was, you know, a pretty big ask for a small community to put up and do that. So that showed, I think, that they cared for their community. And if there's 24 parks in Kingeroy, I'd like to see if maybe you should drop a few parks and improve a few parks, because there's nothing near that figure of parks in Nanango. So, you know, I don't think you can say our 24 parks in Kingeroy have had nothing done to them, and on your 2 parks in Nanango we've spent a lot of money. Doesn't really correlate to me to being a good argument on that. But I appreciate that Council are supporting this on the, well, I'm hoping that Council are going to support the $250,000 to Tipperary Flat. I don't think it's a great amount of money that we're asking to be spent there, especially, as I said, it's 175 years. So we're saying Nanango is the 4th oldest town in Queensland, but let's not forget, Nanango is the oldest town in the South Burnett. So let's start looking at that as well, and you know, see what we can do to support it. And as I said, $250,000 in 25 years is not a lot of money to be putting into a park. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Henson, anything to add from you?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, look, I've had my feelings, expressed my feelings. I don't think there's anybody in the chambers there, and many others outside it will experience 175 years of any entity or town or group or function in our probably the rest of our lifetime. So fully supportive of it and get it done. And how we fund it, and thanks, Councillor Duff. If that can be done, and General Manager May certainly suggests that that's not a problem to take it out of that. Yeah, 175 years, as I've said before, that to me is a no-brainer. It's privileged to be able to share somebody's 175 years. Them come around. So yeah, it's a special occasion. So this to me is a given. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henson. Righto. Just make a couple of observations and then I'll go to Councillor Duff to wrap up. Look, my family's, we were part of the early settlement in the Nanango. The oldest house in the Nanango was my great-grandparents' home. So I've certainly come to appreciate after 7 generations in the area the value of history that's there in that community. And I think that, as Councillor Erkins has said, there is a tremendous opportunity for us as a region to be able to capitalise on the wonderful heritage that Nanango has. And certainly other councils, I think Toowoomba's a good example of where they are holding out their heritage assets as a tourist attraction. And they've been very successful in using that to leverage from and increase the tourism revenue that comes into their region. I think that Nanango, at the southern end of our region, provides a wonderful entry point after coming from Blackbutt into the South Burnett, and I think there's tremendous potential in the Nanango for heritage tourism into the future, with so much history there, dating right back to the early settlement of our wonderful state. So for that reason, the Tipperary Park as one of our heritage parks is something that I'm very keen to support in reallocation of these funds. Look, in terms of Kingeroy, and yes, I live in Kingeroy, I too feel that we do have much more work to do on Kingeroy's parks. I was disappointed and I voted against the extra $2.8 million for KTP. And you'll recall that when I spoke in saying that, I did say that I would be concerned about where we would find the money into the future for projects like Memorial Park, for projects like the Kingeroy swimming pool. And that was part of my reason for not supporting it. It's not that I didn't think that KTP was a great project, but for me a more balanced approach was to look at our parks. The number of people that use Memorial Park and Apex Park up where I live is absolutely tremendous. I did put forward completion of Lions Park, Apex Park car park, in our recent Works for Queensland. I put that forward on multiple occasions as a Works for Queensland project through various emails. I made representation to the staff on that on behalf of the community. And I was sad and disappointed to see that we didn't get that through under our Works for Queensland budget, whereby the $1.5 million for the reservoir was chosen in preference to Lions Park and a car park for Apex Park, because I know many of the people that live up in Division 4 where I live were keen to see better parking arrangements in Apex Park. And I saw disabled people there on the weekend parking on the lower platform and trying to get up to where the barbecues are. And it was very problematic for them. So people are driving up on the grass and parking on the grass. I hope that we can find funding into the future to support the development of Kingeroy's parks, because I do believe they are a very important part of the lifestyle we share here in our largest community in the South Burnett. But having said that, I certainly do feel that this is worthwhile, and I think it's an important contribution that Council makes to the 175th anniversary of our oldest town. So for that reason, I will absolutely be supporting this. Councillor Duff, you have right of reply. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm pleased that the Chamber absolutely supports, and I know they all do, the 175 years, and to get that Tipperary flat to a standard that our region and the town of Nanango can be proud of. I know that even Leo Garrity, who is parochial as he is, even said to me, fancy not supporting that, getting that Tipperary flat, like when he was here in the Chamber, to get that up for that 175 years. So because it is not a good look coming into the beautiful town of Nanango. As far as Memorial Park goes, even if we take that money, there's still $330,000 to spend in this allocation left out of the $580,000 to get something happening in Memorial Park. And although I may appear parochial and very much supporting Division 5, I have on many, many, many occasions when my dad had diabetes and was alive, been to Memorial Park, because we always went to have lunch, and shopping in Kingeroy was something we did regularly, to sit there and see the beautiful park and kids playing in it. And I've always thought what a wonderful centrepiece it has been for and is for Kingeroy. So certainly understand the value of Memorial Park and wanting to support it. So keen to see that money go towards that $330,000, and I think that going forward that it's a good news story for Nanango and for Kingeroy. Thank you.
We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Thank you very much. Carried. Thank you all. Carried anonymously. Okay, now, where are we at with our agenda? 8.1, Water and Wastewater Portfolio Report. That's at page 80. We'll have that recommendation as presented, that the Water and Wastewater Portfolio Report to Council be received for information. Do we have a mover? Councillor Erkin, seconder. Councillor Duff. Councillor Henson, got you. Thank you very much. My apologies. Okay, any speakers? In relation to, what are we on there? Water, wastewater. No issues? Anything you want to add, General Manager? No?
No, Mayor, just business as usual this month.
Probably the only thing I wanted to add is just want to thank everyone for the work that you did with the local disaster management group recently. It was a challenging time to have those floods hit us so quickly. So thanks very much for all the work done there by councillors and our wonderful team, as well as the other agencies. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to check. I can see here in the Capital Works update, the discussion about the SCADA and cyber security updates has been completed. And it looks like that project come in under budget. I just wondered if you might be able to provide a bit of an update as to how that went. From my understanding, there was some major switchboard works also going to happen. Just sort of wondering where they might be at, is my question. And the other thing I just wanted to ask, with the water main replacement program, I did actually have a local business ask me recently. They had put forward a quote to supply the water mains, and they were unsuccessful. I just wanted to understand, do we purchase all of the water mains in one procurement, or do we do that over a period of time? And yeah, what the process is there for the water main procurement?
Thank you, General Manager.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. Regarding the water mains, we do them on a project by project, street by street, so we call the pricings for those. The question regarding the SCADA, I was busy trying to find that. So what was the question for that, Councillor?
81, it just says it's the top of your Capital Works and current water main replacement. SCADA and cyber security updates as a project was completed in expected completion June 22, and the budget amount was 350, and the actual recorded here was 308. So I just wondered, had that come in under budget, and just a bit of an update as to the project, because I was confused. I don't know whether this related to your major switchboard upgrades or they were separate. So just a bit of an update as to how things went.
Yep. Okay. No, thank you. Through you, Mayor. Yeah. So the SCADA and cyber security are totally distinct projects as against switchboard replacements. That expected completion. So the 308,000 there, that would have been as at the 26th of July. So I'm hoping the invoices. Sometimes we're waiting for invoices, so that cost could go up. But we were expecting to have expended the full budget for the project this year. Is that answer the question?
Thank you, General Manager. Okay, further speakers? Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, we're to the last item on the agenda, which is responses to questions raised. It's recommended that those responses raised be received and noted. We'll work through them though first before we put that out. Cumbria Streetscape, I think we've spoken about that already today. Thank you, Manager Darcy. Councillor Henson's decoupling area. Manager Darcy, did you want to give us a brief overview of that? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. With regards to the Cumbria decoupling area, we have been extending decoupling issues regionally with TMR, noting what is needed for the industry. Like we are interested in trying to support the industry, but we want to push them into areas that are good from a strategic point of view. Like we don't need a decoupling area in every town in our region. It's around being smart where the business and industry really need something like that, from an industry point of view. A good example is the intersection of Mundubbera-Geelong and Chinchilla-Wandai, where the Type 1 road trains have to break down and drop that extra trailer off. That's a really good example of a decoupling area. The need for Cumbria is very valid because of the refrigerated units and the lack of flat standing area there to have those in a position where trucks can couple on and then take them to site. So it is an important item that has been flagged with TMR already, but we want to work with them collaboratively on where can we site these to support where the general need is, because they do have more information and data on their network, and we want to work with them on trying to support that. Through the council, it's around understanding what the business and industry need is that we bring back to them to have the discussion around, righto, how does the infrastructure and the industry, dovetail interests in together here. So wanting to work with that, once again, that's not a quick process, but do want to have that on the table, and it's very much a front of mind agenda item, and we're having that discussion monthly with TMR as we speak.
Thank you, Manager. Anything further on that matter from you, Councillor Henson?
No, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Manager Darcy. Can I just, it's off subject a little bit, but in relation to the crossroads out at Geelong and the wonderful facility in the fuel cells there and that decoupling, some conversations there, and there's some silly things happening there. But outside of that, and I'll just let you know, and the chambers know, and for any of the public know, that facility will be up and all systems go at the end of next week. You can pull in there at the moment, which I did the other day. There's power connected there, which appears as though those cells are working. And people are complaining that they're not. But what it is they have to calibrate them. So at the end of next week, there will be fuel, all systems go. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henson. We'll move on to Councillor Duff. You had a question into Darley Crossing Road. Manager Searle, thank you. That's been addressed previously. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just regarding question number 4, Darley Crossing Road. So that's intended to be submitted through our flood damage. It's actually REPA submission number 4, which we're looking at submitting in the next 2 weeks.
Thank you, Manager. Councillor Duff.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just wanted to flag, and I have done this before, that Darling Crossing Road, we were meant to keep it. It was a commitment we made back when we removed Innes Bridge, that we would keep that road in really good condition, because we'd taken that bridge away, and it was going to be very inconvenient for the residents not to have that bridge, and we would keep this road in really smick order. So just, have we done emergency work on it? Because I know it was very bad. So just wondering, how, in the meantime, have we done some emergency work as well as putting it into that REPA submission?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it will have emergency work undertaken, if not already. I have seen photos, particularly of that crossing, and currently we've marked out a lot of the defects there which are due for emergency works, and that's preceding the permanent REPA works.
Thank you.
Thank you, Manager. The next item was question from Councillor Duff, Whelan Street and Millards Road being taken off the unformed roads list. So that was provided as an answer. Yes, that has happened. You comfortable with that, Councillor Duff?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Service road off Kingeroy Kooyar Road, servicing those residents there. And there's a report there. Anything further on that, Manager Searle?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I have provided a little bit of information there. It was intended that that particular road be included in the patrol grading. Normal patrol grading circuit has been halted pending our flood damage. So although there certainly is a desire to get to that as soon as we can, there's also a desire not to take resources away from the emergency works that we're currently doing. So the response there is that we'll attend to that service road on completion of our emergency works.
Councillor Duff.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just wondering if we can provide that feedback to the community, because I know there were some very concerned residents on that road. Is that something we can provide, that feedback, that it is now included in the in the maintenance schedule and that we will be attending to it sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Yep, happy to take that on board, yep.
Thank you, Manager. The final question was Councillor Shoemaker. Kingeroy project qualifying for LRCI funding. Okay, who's got that one? Which officer would like that? General Manager O'May? Madam CEO, thank you.
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. Yes, there was a report that was part of the report there from the infrastructure. When council did request that we do a variation to the funding agreement, we did get the background on it, but we had, because it was to lay on the table, we couldn't overrule the resolution of council, so we missed out on the timing to be able to get that adjustment through, or that variation through. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam CEO. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Very happy with the response. I do think the Kingeroy community have said to us, they've provided a petition to us. We've had discussions with them. They feel as though they are a forgotten town. I do feel curb and channeling for a small town of Kingeroy is a basic need for a community and a project that needs careful consideration for LRCI funding into the future, and I will be advocating for that project. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. And again, it was one of those projects that I had put forward, having met with the Kingeroy community, so I'll be pleased to support you in advocating for that and supporting that Kingeroy community. Well, I think that's pretty well everything, but we'll put this one through. Do we have a mover on this one? Yep, Councillor Duff, and secondly, Councillor Erkins. Okay, so those in favour, carried unanimously. Thanks, everybody. That now brings the meeting to a close, and thank you very much for your attendance and participation today, and have a wonderful rest of day. Thank you all.